And we are live. Hello, everyone. Oh, I just realized I'm very dark in this for some reason.
You're pretty dark, yeah.
Well, this matches my soul. All right. How's everybody doing today? We haven't done one of these in a while, and there are
It's been
reasons for
like a
that.
month, dude. It's been a really long time.
Yeah, I was kind of
I'm
surprised
not,
you guys
I'm not
didn't.
gonna lie. I'm still not feeling 100%, but
Yeah,
I deeply wanted to do this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I missed this.
Yeah. So the reasons why, for folks who are unaware, Griffin was not feeling great, and also Cameron and I were in Munich. Well, Cameron was in Munich. I was in Europe for about a month.
Yeah, you're away
So
for a while.
yeah, exactly. So we haven't had a chance to do one of these. So I'm happy to be back. Happy to be chatting with my friends here. For those who are new to this, who haven't seen us before, we have, of course, the ghost of Justin Trudeau here with us, also known as listener, and then we have Cameron, the most British among us, and well-known tea enjoyer. Actually, I don't know if you enjoy tea. Anyways, it is GoldenSound. And yeah, today we're going to talk about a few things, maybe give a bit of insight into what Munich High End was like, and talk, just kind of get back to some of the discussions that we've been having in the past. In this instance, one of the more relevant ones is to do with the question of like whether high-end products or expensive products are actually better, and if if they're not, why? But just before diving into the show here today, we're just going to give a quick reminder that all of this is made possible by headphones.com. Headphones.com is the primary sponsor of this channel, so it is a great place to buy headphones, audio equipment, speakers, DACs, amps, all that good stuff. There's a 365-day return policy there, and the whole goal with headphones.com is to make it a resource for the community, empowering reviewers like us to speak our mind about various different products, be critical when we feel that it is warranted, but also provide us with the gear, provide us with the headphones to evaluate, and make it really a place for the community to push the industry in a positive direction. So check out headphones.com if you want to support us. We also have a forum at forum.headphones.com. We also have a Discord. I think it's discord.gg/headphones, something like that. So you can chat with us there. And if you would like to participate in or have your ideas or topics featured in the live stream, there's a thread on the forum that should be linked in the description here where you can drop those, and that's where we pull topics from. I think that's it. This is also available on Spotify and other podcast platforms, but we're obviously chatting with you guys here. And there's a Blaine Lacrosse in the comments. Nice to have Blaine in the chat.
So annoying, dude. Just like join. Like
just
what?
join us. Yeah, what are you doing? All right. Not a month, 5 weeks. No, yeah, it's true. Actually, we have been away for a while. We've also been like very heads down on like all the work that needs to go into producing the content for you guys from Munich High End. So it's been a whirlwind. It's been a bit of a blur. I'm still quite jet lagged, but
I'm taking a break from editing to do this. This is my break.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
I have a single gray hair just like sticking out.
Welcome. You are now old and wizened.
Yeah.
Munich was it's always a bit of a crazy experience. This year it felt kind of like interesting because it's the last Munich High End, not the last of this show. It's just that it's moving to Vienna, and no one's quite sure what it's going to look like once it does move over. But well, we've got a video up from last year, which you guys can go and watch, and then this year, I think you guys are going to like it. It was a lot of
should be a
fun,
video.
crazy stuff. Yeah, that's going up on Wednesday, and the interesting thing with Munich is it is the best place to try and answer the question of is more expensive better, because there is some very, very expensive stuff there. A lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's about 250 individual rooms with each having their own speaker setup and everything, and then 4 massive halls with dozens and dozens of vendors and setups and everything in them as well, all the way down to really, really cheap stuff. So Well, Resolve, do you have any particular thoughts that you wanted to kind of bring up on the question, since I think it was a
Yeah.
big question?
So actually, this is Griffin's question. I think there's or Griffin's topic. I think there's sort of two sides to this. For people who are not familiar at all with how any of these products perform, there's a general assumption, perhaps erroneous, that the more money that you spend on a piece of audio equipment, the more likely you are to get something that is actually very good. And when you actually look at the performance of these products, past a certain threshold, the overwhelmingly the gear gets much more esoteric, the higher in price it gets. It's not always the case. There are some that are, quite good, that are also very high end, that are very expensive. And we did get a chance to try some of that stuff at Munich High End. But like, forget the headphone side of things, right? Like, if you just consider the speaker world, consistently, it was the modest, like, still high end stuff, still expensive stuff, but it was the far more modest setups that sounded really good. And it was the crazy, elaborate, ridiculous, multi-$100,000 setups that sounded quite strange, or you could clearly tell, like, this is not something that is even remotely competitive, right? Like, forget value, forget any of that stuff. This is just to have something that is weird. And the crazy thing about this is, when you talk to the people who are sort of the engineers or the designers behind some of these things, I'm thinking of specifically those crazy horn setups that you would see in all the various
Yeah.
different rooms. They
The most
genuinely.
esoteric ones do tend to be
Oh,
horns.
yeah.
I don't
The
quite know why, but they all
Yeah,
do tend to be.
yeah. The engineers behind that genuinely believe that that stuff sounds better. Like, I say engineers, like, the people who are making them, right? And of course, a huge part of it is how they look, right? It's the story behind whatever this thing is, right? Um, and you put them in these well, the idea, I imagine, would be you put them in whatever showroom that you might want to have, and it becomes a conversation piece because they're so huge, right? And they're so eye catching. Um, but like, when it comes to their actual performance, like, if you compared any of those, like, horn, or the multi-$100,000 setups with the Genelec room, for example, where the products in there, you're they're ranging from, like, 3,000 to, they're for much of it is under $10,000. It's not even close to the price tag of some of those crazy rooms. The Genelec stuff sounded way better, right? And even if you do go to the high end stuff, like, I'm not sure what the price of the JBL Summit series was. Um,
Hmm.
I imagine it was quite expensive still, but the
Yeah,
setup
yeah, it's not
itself,
cheap.
yeah, the setup
Well, the
itself,
Genelecs aren't cheap either.
no, they're not cheap, but
No.
they're not nine.
Comparatively.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Comparatively.
comparatively, they're
comparatively,
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Genelecs are expensive. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm talking more about, like, the setups that were involved, right? Like, the rest of what's going on in the room, for the ones that actually sounded good, was far more modest, right? They didn't have these crazy stacks. They didn't have, you know, DAC and amp and streamer stuff that looked like it was made from a car, like, that was somehow also made from marble, whatever. And uh, I don't know if that's necessarily like a case study or a microcosm of what this is in other parts of this industry, or even other industries. In the headphone side of things, I think you have a number of products that, like, there's sort of a counterexample here that I want to raise for headphones. My favorite headphone of the show, and I'll talk about this more on the in the wrap up video, was the Austrian Audio Composer. It's a super expensive headphone. It's like $2,600 or something like that. I know, Griffin, you don't like it, but, like, I was just
I
going
mean,
around the show.
I haven't,
I haven't heard it.
well, I haven't heard the version you have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Probably
So there's a
has, yeah.
there's a nuance there. There was a subtle change. It's not a big change. Let me be very clear. Like, if you didn't like it, if you hated that sound signature before, it's not that much of a change that it would completely transform the headphone or anything. But I was just going around listening to various different products, and enjoying the show as one does. And the one that stood out to me the most as, like, oh, this is just great, was the Composer, and it happened to be one of the more expensive products there. Um, so, like, I don't think that there's necessarily, like, a the higher the price tag, then what. things go downhill past a certain watershed, right? I don't think it's quite like that. It's more that as the price increases, you get less and less competence generally, because now things are getting more esoteric. They're getting more, let's take a shot on this, more moonshotty, let's just say. And that leads to a lot more risks, or just risks if it's from somebody, making it, competently, but also just weird designs, because that's what it took to be able to make those products. um and the flip side is, of course, that for the stuff that is highly competent, that is like uh at much more affordable price tags, like for example the new Sennheiser HD 550, right? That's playing in an arena that is hyper competitive, and so it needs to be, there's a significant pressure on it to be extremely good. So I think you're dealing with these two kind of like, forces that are pulling things into these directions, where the result is, you know oftentimes the things that are more expensive are not actually better. So that's sort of my general take on it. um I I do feel that, like, there is something to be said for, like, when you go to these shows. Maybe Cameron, if you want to give your perspective on this,
Mm.
but like when you go to these shows, um, there is there's an element of scrutiny that goes away, and that brings with it an element of joy that you
What
wouldn't
do you mean?
otherwise. Well, like, you're not really yes, you're trying to listen and evaluate, critically to the best of your ability,
Oh,
but you're
okay, I
also
see
just
what you
there to
mean.
take in whatever the experience is. And
Yeah.
like, the example I'll give is that one horn setup where it was the
Oh,
smaller horn
yes.
setup in that one room.
Once Custom, they're called.
Was it? Okay.
ONCE Custom. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't really like them very much on after like the second or third song, but that initial experience of walking into that room was great. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, so
I
when
I I
you
think
remove that, there's some fun to be had, you know?
where where I kind of sort of stand back and look at it is you sort of have to think about, okay, why is a product expensive? Because it stands to reason that if you want the best possible sound quality, you're not going to get it by, strapping some tin and wiring and like the cheapest possible driver you can get in a cardboard. Like there needs to be resources put into stuff, both in terms of R&D and in terms of the actual construction. And for both electronics and for acoustics, there are going to be certain more, expensive and complex methods of construction and design that will yield a better result and are therefore going to cost more. Like you said, those JBLs and stuff, they cost quite a bit.
Mhm.
Genelecs, they cost quite a bit. The Composer, it costs quite a bit. But then you go to the bits where it's like, okay, this is really expensive, but it's not expensive necessarily for reasons that are actually going to make it sound better. Either it's because it's a company that puts a hell of a lot of money into marketing material. Like there are certain brands where you're going through Munich and whatever, and they've got billboards like down the street outside, and they've got big
Yeah.
brick and mortar dealers and stuff that they've got to give bigger margins to. They put a huge amount of money into those kind of things, which has to be recouped, or it's got like a really, really nice, pretty chassis and stuff, which costs money. It's not that the price isn't justified. It's just that that doesn't contribute to sound quality. And with a lot of the sort of higher end speaker stuff, again, like you're not going to get the very best possible sound quality out of a $200 pair of speakers. You actually can't build things with the necessary design aspects to achieve that for that lower price. But when you're like spending, okay, why is this product $3 million? It's not because there's been $1 million of R&D and they've got these super complex, construction methods that are just all about achieving this. It's because they make two of them a year, if that. And that alone, the volume of it contributes to it significantly. A lot of these, they do use much more expensive methods for aesthetic reasons, like the speakers in the Airy Surat room. I can't remember what they were called. These
The huge
massive
ones that look like a butt, yeah.
no, 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 not those ones. Those ones
Oh,
are the
okay.
$7 million ones. The ones
No,
it was like a
the other
sort of
ones,
white.
they also look like a
They
butt.
both look like butts, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like the entire speaker, which is like 8 foot tall, and it's got these massive horns and stuff coming out of it, had this like pearlescent marble sort of finish
Mhm.
to it. And it's like that, you just look at it and it's like, that looks expensive. And if you're wanting to just pay for really expensive furniture, then
Yeah.
that's fine. You don't want
It
just a
it's not
matte
even
black cover.
furniture. It's like really, I mean, yes, it's furniture, but it's like really expensive, like, I don't know, room decor.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
But that wasn't picked because it was the best thing for sound quality. It's like the same thing, the HE1 even, which the HE1's a fantastic headphone. But if you were just wanting to get the same result for less money, you could if you didn't have it, in a solid piece of marble with everything
Yeah.
installed into that, or a nice motorized whatever.
I do want to note
Being
those
more,
speakers were not like they may have sounded okay in the sweet spot where because you got a chance to sit down there, but like
Mm,
it, anywhere else in that room, it just sounded horrible. And like it wasn't like we were that far off axis,
yeah, no, you
like
did. I have to say they did sound significantly better when you were
yeah,
in the sweet spot. I will give them
yeah.
that. But I wasn't. I mean, I'm just not a fan of horns generally.
No,
I've
they're
not
they're
found a
bad.
pair of. I've just not never found a pair of horns that I didn't have some kind of like honkiness or aggressiveness to me,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
But yeah, I think where I land on it is if you want the best, it's going to be expensive just because the R&D and the construction needed to achieve that is inherently going to be somewhat expensive. It then scales depending on volume. Like if you're only making 3 or 4 of these, it's going to cost a lot more than if it is something like the Austrian Audio Composer that can be somewhat mass manufactured. I'd say mass manufactured lightly
mhm,
there. But then if you're like, okay, well, we're going to go and pay, $100,000 or $1 million or whatever. It's not because all of that money is going towards stuff that directly affects sound quality. A lot of it's marketing. Just the fact that they were at that show, that would have cost a hell of a lot of money to
yeah.
get them there.
Gonna get to bring
Um,
the people as well, like
yep.
logistics, all of that stuff.
And I there's nothing inherently wrong with being like, I want to do this, esoteric and kind of exotic 1 or 2 off thing. Like we're only gonna make 3 of them. It's gonna cost $1 million because it is genuinely very expensive to manufacture. But I think a lot of people forget that there is a difference between something being legitimately expensive and therefore the price being valid versus all of that cost going towards stuff that actually is directly contributing to sound quality. And I mean in a way where actually contributing to sound quality, not what one person thinks is better. Because there are a lot of speakers where they do that. It's like, well, we think that the best way to build a speaker is to
Yeah.
have 16 different horns of all different sizes
I
and things firing out in all different directions. Like,
I
okay,
I
that's fine. Other people would disagree, but
I have a question for you on that. Do do you guys think that like are these people that there needs to be funding for a lot of these projects to get off the ground and become products that are just ridiculous, Is this just like investor scams? Like is somebody going to people and being like, "Look, I have this great idea for a for a speaker or for something like that," and
I
provide
think
some sort of demonstration and proof of concept, and it
because
looks cool, and then they're like swindling them into putting the money behind it to make it happen.
I think less than you'd think, because I've
Okay.
had this conversation with a few different both manufacturers. I've been quite blunt about it, and some distributors and stuff as well. And there's some of them, it's been an interesting case where like there's one guy who's got quite a bit of money, and he's like, I want to make some speakers that do this, and it's going
Yeah.
to cost me a lot of money. If I can sell 2 or 3 of these and cover most of the costs so that I can have one myself. Like they made
Mhm.
it for themselves. If they can sell a couple units to cover the cost of making it, that's the goal,
Yeah,
which
but
makes sense.
I
That's
just
totally fine.
I'm that makes sense, but I'm so confused by some of the ones where it's like, who would want this? Who would
Some
want to?
of them have to be money laundering. Like there's
There has to
some
be
of them
something like that. Yeah,
that where there have to be. I mean, there was, I don't
yeah.
know if you saw it, but the Chrono memory stick thing.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
It's a $4,000 USB stick which you plug into your stream or whatever, and it makes it sound better and stuff. It is a SanDisk like 32 gig memory stick that they've changed the badge on,
No.
and like that is just. I mean, they show pictures of the inside, and it's like it is just the SanDisk memory thing. Like they've not, it's not their own thing quite how they can possibly
Oh,
be
this is
charging four
giving
thousand dollars.
Telus a run for the money.
Yeah, it is. Either they are just thinking like a couple people will buy this and the profit margins are infinite, so why not? Or it's just some money laundering. Like
Yeah.
there can't there can't be enough people who simultaneously have 4 or 5 grand to spend on a memory stick and also little enough sense to actually spend that much money on a memory stick. I just
Yeah.
refuse to believe that there's
I
that many people.
yeah. There is this like we have to like take a I think at least consider a sensible route here of like or sensible path here of like it's fine for expensive products to exist. It's fine for high-end things to exist. It's good even because,
Yeah.
it's there are products that are awesome that happen to be expensive, and part of what makes them awesome in ways that are not to do necessarily with sound quality, but are like, like I'm thinking of like the Meze, like the Empyrean 2s and stuff like
Mm.
that, where they have really nice design, they're very comfortable, all that stuff. That's really cool. But at the same time, at a certain point, it becomes it becomes yes, a scam, but there's something so disingenuous about there's something so just like kind of fucked up, to be honest, about the industry making it so that that stuff is not repudiated at every turn, right? Like
Mm.
I'll just say like the Telos example, right? Like the fact that that is allowed to have an exhibit at a massive audio trade show to me is kind of weird, right? Because it is so
Yeah.
obviously a scam. Uh,
Or the
yeah, I mean,
Chrono thing. Like they had a
but,
big
but, but
room.
that's just one tiny example. Those shows are full of stuff like that, you know. And it goes all the way from $200,000 power units or were resonating quantum resonating racks or whatever to
Yeah.
those little wooden Cardis blocks that you guys
Oh yeah.
like okay, it's like what was it like 90 euros
Yeah, it was like 90 euros for a
for a
pack
set
of
of
6
blocks.
little blocks
Like
of wood.
what is
Uh,
wrong with people?
I just I
There's
mean,
something so
don't
fucked up about that.
I don't blame the event organizers for that because if you
No,
start
I'm
doing
not
that, where do you
saying
draw the
I'm not
line?
saying that. I'm saying like from the media, like which is why
Oh
I'm glad
yeah,
we, you know, that's actually shout out to DMS for that idea of trying to find the most expensive stuff, and
it
that's
was
what
a good
kicked off
idea.
that thing. But that it needs to be called out, I think, in order
Yeah,
to
well,
kind of push
it
things
gives
in
the
a more
entire
positive direction.
industry a bad name
It does. It
because
does. That's
the
that's the
thing is,
issue.
when you just say audiophile to someone, like
Yeah.
there are a lot of people outside of it who just think, oh, like idiot who believes in complete nonsense.
Yeah. And that's
When
why.
actually, yeah, and that's why. But there are so many companies that are genuinely doing some fantastic engineering, make some fantastic products, and are genuinely pushing the boundaries of like, well, you know, actual research, actual understanding, and actually making advancements. It
Yeah.
is, and they
It's
kind of
unfair to
get their
them.
image. It
It's
is. It's
it's
unfair to the people who are actually doing real stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Griffin, what's
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
your
find it
saying.
I find it a little tough to say things like that are a scam when, at least in my experience, so many of the manufacturers making things by the thing that they are selling. Like the philosophy or the
but
magic or whatever, like
I
they
wonder how
are
many of them do
with
that's
though.
I really do.
I actually think it's a lot because I think even the ones where
You think they've
it's
had the Kool-Aid.
yeah, I think they found the recipe for the Kool-Aid and liked it so much that they wanted to share it. Like maybe that's a bit
I think you need to go to one of these shows, dude.
optimistic or idealistic, but
There's some stuff at these shows where you're like, how would anybody want this? Let alone spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on
Well,
it.
I mean, it's like
I mean, yeah,
you
I
know,
know that.
the Telos stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
You can almost like, even though it is utterly ridiculous, you can to some degree see how like some of the people behind it might actually think that they're doing it. The same with cables and whatever. But then they're like this memory stick thing. I'm sorry, it's a memory stick. That they also
Yeah.
explicitly tell you not to plug into a computer because then it'll ruin the effect. Like it's
Right.
you have to send it back and get it fixed.
Yeah. I
They
I
probably
I,
just
I
don't want
tend
you to plug it in and have it say like SanDisk 32 gig or
yeah.
whatever. Um,
I tend to think that there's this extremely high degree of suggestibility that accompanies a lot of this.
mm,
And maybe you're right, Griffin, that is like you've sort of uncovered the nexus of high degree of suggestibility and people with more money than sense enough that they can develop these products for themselves because they believe it. But
Yeah.
when you go to these shows and you see just how much it is and how like how much of this happens and how exorbitant it is and ridiculous it is, I have to believe at some level somebody is self-aware enough that this is a scam, right? Or that this is like I'm not even talking about the 90 euro wooden blocks that do nothing, right? Like That's just hilarious. That's it's paying 90 euros for what is it? It was Cardus was the brand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm,
paying
yeah,
90 euros for their logo on a block, right? I
mhm.
mean, that's just stupid. Anybody buying that is an idiot.
Yeah,
um,
because there are ones like grounding boxes and stuff where I do genuinely think that the people making them actually think that
yeah,
it does exactly what they say. Um, and there are a lot of, speaker, like a lot of the more esoteric speaker manufacturers and stuff. I absolutely believe that, they do think that they are doing things in a way that is either the right way to do it or, just whatever. But then there's just some of the more ridiculous stuff, like some of the Telos stuff, like the USB stick that costs 4 grand. It's like you I cannot I've tried. I cannot think of a way that you can sell a $4,000 USB
yeah,
stick and not realize, like, and not think, "Oh, this is a good grift."
See, I don't know. Like I've experienced so many cases, admittedly not in the ultra high end, but where the consumers are basically on the same level of understanding as the manufacturer, if not even better. So like the idea that a manufacturer like has to know that what they're selling is absolutely ridiculous nonsense, when the customer similarly doesn't know, I feel like it makes total sense to me that they would be on the same page of misunderstanding. Like I don't think
No,
it actually.
no, but this is the thing. I don't think it is misunderstanding. I think some of them are just
I'm being
so.
generous when I use that term.
Yeah, like there's stuff which can be misunderstood or lack of understanding or whatever, and then there's stuff where it's like there is no way to physically make this where you wouldn't realize that what you're like, even if the
yeah.
USB stick thing was working, which
I
it,
don't
it
know, dude.
they're not changing the PCB.
I
It
know,
is
I
that
know.
memory stick and they've changed the logo.
Yeah.
Like,
I
why four
100%
thousand
believe
dollars? How
that
can you
that
justify four
because
thousand dollars?
But it's
no,
but
no,
it's not that.
because
It's
people
not.
people believe that like just like say I'm a customer of that kind of thing and I'm buying it. Like I think there are customers of that kind of product that actually know, right? It's just a standard USB stick in a different case or something like that. But they think something about the process they underwent to put it in that case was magical, and therefore it
Yeah.
has an effect. Like
I mean, we have heard some stories from Alan about this.
right, like I think people are way more able to believe in the magic of absolutely nothing actually happening than we may give credit for. Like, I don't think it's a situation where the consumers know absolutely nothing about these devices. Like we would hope. Like for someone to buy something so stupid, you would hope they know absolutely nothing. But most people don't know absolutely nothing. They know a little bit about technology. Like you kind of have to be in
You have
this
a sense
space.
of what a USB stick is,
Yeah.
usually.
So I think it's more so that there is a very interesting contradiction that happens in audio internally in their brains where they may know the simplicity mechanically of some of these things, but they still believe that very
Mm.
small things can make a very large difference due to literally magic. And I don't think that belief is exclusive to consumers or manufacturers. Like I think the same level of um, belief in magic is present such that I think the person selling the USB stick could also believe just putting it in a different plastic or whatever could make a massive difference that is worth
Well,
charging out the
okay,
wazoo for.
potentially. This is where I think there is a bit of a nuance for me, though. Even if they believe it, do they? How does their belief justify the $4,000 price tag?
Well, it
Mm.
doesn't. It just makes it harder to call it a scam for me.
Well, no, if it only costs
But but
400, then it wouldn't work as well.
but clearly,
True.
but
Very true.
to me, the scam isn't so much in, maybe this is like a stupid idea, but
The
like to me,
intention.
this the scam, yeah, isn't necessarily if somebody has deluded themselves and if it has put their efforts into
Right.
making bring a product to market that they feel makes a difference even though it doesn't do anything at all. It's in the idea that, oh, I should price this at $10,000.
Yeah.
I mean, forget USB stuff, fucking cables, right? Like they're the people who make headphone cables, for example, then say and make all kinds of claims about their sound quality. Probably do believe it, right? They're probably believers. But then what licenses something like the JPS Lab situation to You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
even if they believe that the cable makes a difference, they're selling that for however many thousands of dollars, and it's literally just a re-wrapped,
I mean,
OEM
that's
cable.
a good example of like how it's hard to say how you couldn't realize because there are people that sell like they genuinely buy very quite expensive actual like core materials and they make
Yeah,
the cables out of it and everything and use nice connectors and stuff and like their opinion almost doesn't matter because like it genuinely costs them quite a lot to make. But then if you are taking an OEM cable, putting a sleeving
mhm,
on it, and then saying it's magic, that's a bit of a different story.
yeah, and, I tend to think that there needs to be a bit more responsibility in how things are in the pricing of things, and you know that they're
Well,
like I'm not
I
saying, like, responsibility in the sense of, like, idealism here. I'm saying in the sense of, like, if you genuinely feel everybody wants to make money, right? Like, let's just be clear. That's a core part of the fact that this is an industry. There's
Yes, if you're
products that
selling
people are buying and
something.
selling, yeah.
Yes.
At the same time, I kind of think that in of itself is such a massive part of the discoverability problem of the good things that are in this space. Like,
yeah,
what the nuggets of joy, the nuggets of goodness are obscured in many ways because of the stupidity of pricing in in many ways. Like, yes, the stupidity of products, but anybody can recognize snake oil for snake oil. It's well, hopefully not anybody, but many of the reasonable people can, right? It's the idea that hey, in order to get into this space, I need to have super deep pockets to be able to participate, because people are you know I don't know if this is like intentional gatekeeping or anything like that, but like there is that element of it, right? Where it's like I don't even want to bother dipping my toes into the audiophile world because that's so harmful for my wallet. And I want to tell people, I want to shake people and be like, that you don't need to have deep pockets to be able to have here,
well,
participate in it.
the weird thing is, and I've had this conversation with I think 2 or 3 manufacturers now. I almost feel like it's a little bit of a pull rather than a push situation. It's not necessarily that manufacturers are just like, thinking, "Oh, we can get away with higher prices." There are manufacturers who've told me quite bluntly, like, "We had to raise our price
Oh yeah,
just because of the
100%.
fact that otherwise customers will say that our product is not as good." Like, if your competitor releases a headphone that costs $1,000 more than yours, people will say that that one's better, regardless of
Hmm.
whether it is or not. And that has caused a lot of manufacturers to kind of continually like just edge
Yeah.
their pricing further and further and further. And so now we've ended up in this situation where, if you look back even just 5 years ago, like a Sysvara was a ridiculously high-end headphone. There were not many people that would go out and buy one. And there weren't many other headphones other than like, maybe the 1266 or something. Like there weren't many options around that price. And now it feels like almost every other headphone costs 5 grand.
Yeah, and that's what
And
I'm talking about, where it's like there is no sense of what the product is and how it fits competitively in the market. Generally, it's just, oh, I have this new product that's developed. Oh, fuck it, $10,000. Like, it's just to participate. It's just to be next to whatever other high end product on the shelf, right? It's in a way a strategic thing, and I actually, again, I don't really like from a strategic outlook. I don't fault brands for doing this.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
nor should you.
like
yeah,
But it
it's just
is
Blaine.
kind of shitty.
all it is all coming back to uh I feel like I say it too much on this show, but consumers are the problem. Like, if no one bought this shit, like it wouldn't happen.
Blaine just says something in chat. He said, "I quite literally had a conversation at CanJam New York where a guy said he was looking for a $10,000 amplifier, and Blaine suggested he consider something less expensive, and the guy seemed really disappointed."
Yeah,
And
because
just to just to
he's
make clear
not
how
he's not looking to maximize his audio experience. He's
no,
looking to
he's
maximize his magic
squanders some money.
experience.
But
Like,
like, I mean, as an example of how ridiculous that is, he mentioned as a cheaper alternative the Zale HM1. Like, uh, when that's the budget option.
Sorry,
Uh,
that's just too cheap. It's you need some.
I mean,
Yeah,
look, it's valid to want nice things, right? Like that's fine. But the fact that it kind of uh poisons the well of demand overall and kind
that's
of
what I'm talking about. That's the
forces
problem. Yeah.
value system of the overall hobby to lean towards the um, stupid.
Well, the
uh,
same thing happens in other areas, like cars. It's a very competitive market, and for most people, you are genuinely trying to maximize your range, comfort, features, whatever for your money. But then at like the higher end and stuff, there are a lot of people that will go and buy a Ferrari, not because the Ferrari is the best car that you can get for your money, but because, well, it's really they're really expensive and hard to get, and you have to be on a list and stuff. So it's like it's a there's a magic thing about it. It's not that it's a faster car. It's a
I don't know
magic
if I
thing
really I don't know
or a
if I really
flex thing.
mind that, because for a lot of people they just want a Ferrari, right? To
right.
me, the
I mean, it's the
parallel
Yeah,
same
but
with
is
that's the
audio.
thing. A lot of
Yeah.
people's like, I just want. I don't care if it's actually, but I just want a $10,000 head. I just want it in a Menace.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. But to me, right, I'm saying that doesn't necessarily illustrate the problem as much. Just because some people have that fetish about the Ferrari doesn't mean that normal people are, kind of like um look down on the idea of buying a car generally. Like, people still buy cars, right? And it's not like it's a fairly ubiquitous thing. I think to me the parallel is more along the lines of like wine, right? There is this sense of wine is a snobby drink. It is a snobby thing to get into. The enjoyment of this product is you know it's this sort of like
I don't agree with this comparison as well, because typically, at least in my experience, expensive wine is better. And like
oh
not
oh,
like
okay.
okay.
Oh,
crazily,
okay.
I
Yes.
but
I
In
think
that
just
sense, yes.
like
But here's the problem. So I was saying this to, I think, Cameron, you were there.
Mm.
I was saying this to somebody, um, Joe, maybe it was. One of the best wines that I've ever had in my life. I had it on this trip that I went on. I had it in Slovenia. It was a Rebula that cost me €5, and I just randomly bought it at a market. And I went,
Slovenian wine
"Holy
is
shit!"
really, really good.
It blew my mind. I
Yep.
couldn't believe. I mean, I also had some other ones that were more expensive that were worse, but like the fact that I could get that for €5 was insane. And so to me, this idea that like in order to appreciate wine, you have to engage with the stupid part of it, right? Which is like the people who are, you know, have you watched that movie called I feel like it's called Somme or something like that. It's about sommeliers trying to, anyways,
Mm.
they they get like, you guys think we're nerdy about audio, like these people are.
Yeah, they're literally cork sniffing. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like you don't have to you don't have to like, participate in that to be able to enjoy, you know, really great products.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it's helpful to immerse yourself in that insofar as it'll like educates you enough to find something that you think you'll enjoy,
yeah,
right? Like, getting into the nuances of like different grapes, right? Like knowing what kind of wine you like isn't something that's immediately apparent to someone who's just shopping at the low end because they're getting whatever they can afford. But if if you have a little bit more money to play with and you can be selective and try a bunch of different things, you might find that natural orange wines are your favorite. And you wouldn't have known that if you hadn't
yeah.
dived a little bit deeper. Um, but that's not what's happening with high-end audio, where like I feel like diving a little bit deeper is like learning how to read measurements, right? Like
Well,
going
certainly these days, I think that's
yeah,
yeah.
because it helps with the selection process of buying something that'll have a higher chance of being preferable or whatever. What's happening in high-end audio is not really like that,
Hmm.
because
There's
it's
just, I think that the
go
thing
ahead.
that's like a troubling or a difficult to kind of divide is the stuff where it's like, it is. I understand why it's expensive. Okay, Luxman P100. I totally understand why that amp is so expensive. The cost, in my opinion, is completely justified.
It's
I
premium.
don't think it's good value for money. I think there are much cheaper amps that sound better. But in terms of like, oh well, it should be cheaper. No, you can't make it for cheap. Like, it genuinely costs an absurd amount to make, and
Right.
there's a hell of a lot of work that's gone into it.
So then
But
the
being more
rebuttal
expensive doesn't mean it sounds better.
Right, but so then the rebuttal there would be, well, they should have just done it differently so that it could be so that it could be less expensive. If there's
Well,
no
yeah,
need
that's
to
why
make it
I'd
that
buy
way,
a different product
that's why
instead.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, but
So
then
it's
but that's the thing is then there's that where stuff's like justified, and then there's other stuff where it's like, no, this is expensive because you wanted to put an extra zero on it and have people think it's better
right,
or
and
treat it
both of
differently.
those things exist, and
Yeah,
it's hard to really get a clear sense of. I mean, and in either case, there's good reasons to buy something else, right? But
yeah,
one of them feels less bad just because I don't know. Does it feel less bad? Is it
It's tough
I
worse?
because
think so. I
there's a
think so.
certain
Intuitively, it
level of
does,
like,
but I don't know. Like if you could just say we should have just done it differently.
okay, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it sucks because there's a certain level of romance and uh, artistic whatever to taking the less efficient route
I
to
mean,
make
like a tube
something
amplifier in and of
unnecessarily hard to
itself is
make.
exactly
Like,
that. Like a tube amplifier doesn't need to
yeah,
exist,
I
but it's
the
there's
one I
something
think
fun
of
about it.
is the Subtonic Storm, where
Yes.
like, they did all this crazy shit that was not necessary to do, and
Yeah.
obviously it drove the price up. Now in that case, I think they would say, the measures we took are necessary to get the sound that we wanted to get, which I would probably disagree with, but regardless of that, I think there's a special feeling as a consumer of
Mhm.
that kind of product that I don't necessarily want entirely to go away. I just don't think it needs to be associated with inefficiency. Like
Mhm.
I think it could be about the look of the product or like the story of the
Yeah,
people
it's
working
just that
on it.
that
Like
people aren't buying it with that in mind. That's not their motivation, right? They genuinely feel there's a special sauce and a magic going on that
yeah,
can't.
the manufacturers and the consumers both feel
Yeah,
that way, I think.
yeah,
In a lot of cases, not all cases.
yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'd be lying if I said that when I, bought the HM1, there wasn't part of it that was like, well, there's something kind of nice about having an amp that was handmade by Michael Zale, and I know that he's like his history and the artists that he's been involved with and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't have bought it if it was just that. I also
mhm.
bought it because it sounds great, it measures great, and the fact that it objectively does so well with the design it has in a way that no other amp I'm aware of can do. Like that's also just cool to me as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's. I think that it's good that they're like you go to Munich and there are so many different flavors and approaches to speak. Just sticking with speakers, I think that that's good. I think that it would be kind of boring if it was just like 500 different colors of Genelec. That wouldn't be
Oh man,
what I know.
I
Andrew would be in heaven, but
yeah.
I would find
Put
that
me in
quite
that show.
disappointing. The
Well, but
variety is
Genelec
part
is
of the
another
enjoyment.
example of a company where, like, I mean, obviously, a lot of consumers aren't going to feel this way, but there's a certain romance in the idea of this Finnish brand,
Actually,
being
I,
kind of iconoclastic and
I
just
I I do have to
trying to
say
make the like objectively best speaker.
that in and of itself is the brand story. I think you're
Yeah,
absolutely right.
and that's a cool
The
story.
I will say
to me.
those Genelecs in person are a lot nicer to look at than what the
Oh,
Oh yeah,
pictures
photos don't
reveal.
do
oh
Like
really
they
do them
don't.
justice.
well, are you talking about the ones
Well, the
specifically?
ones in
Like,
particular, because
yeah,
they have all kinds of
yeah,
fun.
They
Like
kind of
ones are
look
sick.
bad in
Yeah.
photos, to be honest.
yeah, but even the big ones that they had there, like the giant white ones, those
I
look
mean, those
kind of
ones.
they look a
Oh,
little
the
bit
giant ones.
alien,
Those are
but
ones. Those are the ones as well.
those
They're
are
the
the ones as
flagship
well. Okay, they're
ones.
just
Yeah,
bigger. Yeah, the bigger ones. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they looked sick. I thought.
I mean, they had some like new colorways and stuff, so you can just like
Yeah,
pick
Yeah,
any like
yeah, yeah.
Pantone color or whatever you want, and those look pretty nice as well. There's some like
yeah.
crimson red ones or something. I mean, what once you start getting into like they had their flagship like reference monitor like for professional environments with like 4 tweeters and stuff. Like those ones, I'd be lying if I said I thought they looked good.
It just
But
looked
they're also
very
that's
basic.
like yeah, well, yeah, they do, but at the same time,
Just
those like it's a
utilitarian.
professional tool. You're not buying it for
Yeah,
artistic. They're not furniture.
yeah.
And I also kind of understand like there are people that have bought an HE1 and never turned it on. Like there's people who buy them as a statement piece and that's what they want it for, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain
There
point,
are different
it's a bit
reasons
like
to buy
yeah,
these
there are,
things.
but at a certain point, it becomes a question of like, is there merit in ridiculing people who there's the I'm gonna, ridiculing people. That's not what I mean. Is there merit in criticizing, I guess, the idea of buying who are those people who buy like the collector's editions of whatever the collector's editions of video games and never open them? It's just there.
Mm.
It's there to have on the shelf, right? And to me, I would never personally do anything like that. But I don't feel like, you know, I don't feel that's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, it's not it's something that somebody has a particular
Yeah.
appreciation for that
No,
they
but
want
that's the
to
thing is
preserve.
that's different because that's something where you've got a particular appreciation for that story, product, brand, game, whatever, or
Yeah.
you buy a speaker or a set of headphones or so, and you're just like, I just appreciate all the work and effort that's gone into this. That's very different to being like, I think this $4,000 USB
Yeah, yeah,
stick is
yeah.
going to
It
make my
is it
system
is
sound
different,
better.
but I do feel like as far as like the collector's side of things, HE5 HD580, that is a collector's item and people buy those and don't ever open them. And I don't
Really?
think that yeah,
Right.
I've only encountered one person who really does that.
is this Joel?
No, it's Phil. Joel actually uses the headphones
Oh, okay,
typically.
because we bought one from him.
Yeah, no. I mean,
um,
Joel was on a streak of just consuming to consume because they
yeah.
were dealing with med school, but
Shout
no,
out to Joel.
they don't really do that anymore.
Oh, okay.
But I know Phil has bought
Phil?
pairs
Okay.
just to leave unopened.
Yeah.
But Phil is very much so like a collector kind of
Yeah.
guy.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Like I'm not
I don't
but
think there's
I
anything wrong
agree. I agree,
with
Cameron.
someone
It's
doing that. Like, I don't think it's their fault or anything like that. I
yeah.
do think there is the unfortunate consequence, though, of that, um, you know, furthering the life of companies who maybe should have failed because you're supporting bad products. Like in the case of the 580, I mean, those are only available used, so it's not really a perfect example. But say a bunch of people like me or like Blaine or like you, despite the OAE1 being something we thought sounded terrible, decided to
That's a
buy it
great example.
anyway.
Yeah.
And, that led to Axel Grell making a ton of money and thinking, oh, this is the right direction. I should keep going this direction.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some product like the
That's
the
bad.
acapella hyperspheres, which are the massive horn butt speakers. They're like 12 feet tall and stuff, and they cost 9 million euros. I think
9 I thought it was 7 million.
I thought it was 7. Turns out it's 9.
Oh, well,
Um,
that's just
Jesus Christ.
tariffs. Uh, it's like I almost feel like I'd almost struggle to believe that there are people that are buying that not for either just flexing / image reasons. In the same way that, like Bugatti makes a loss on all of the Chirons that they sell.
Mhm.
And if you're buying that, it's not because you actually. I guess that one's not the best example because it does genuinely have some like top of the line stuff. But there are various cars where you're not actually buying it because you actually think it's the best thing. You are buying it to flex, or you are buying it for just purely image reasons. And I think the
It
thing with
becomes
those speakers is they're not scamming people. I think it's exorbitantly overpriced, and I think that their profit margins must be insane. But it's not. It's. I think it's important to differentiate the criminally overpriced
Mhm.
stuff from the just straight up nonsense that
Yes.
I'm kind
I
of
agree,
surprised is legal in certain
but
places.
I also think the criminally overpriced stuff should be called out for being stupid,
Yeah, I mean, I
right?
also
Like,
think it doesn't
it's not
necessarily
a
matter
scam.
because the kinds of people that are going to buy that stuff aren't
No, I
aren't
know.
going to pay attention to YouTube. But
That's true. But I think it does this space a disservice if it is not called out for being ridiculous,
yeah,
right? Like it is, and
yeah, no,
that's
you
why I
had
say
to
like
say
there's a
something.
you have to you I feel like it is it's a core part of this. If something is actively making the space dumber for whatever reason, and price is one of the reasons, it should be called out.
Yeah,
Because in that situation, it's not a product that actually sounds better than products that cost like $300. It's a 9 million euro thing that kind of sounds like ass.
But this is the thing is like you've kind of got to be a little careful with that because there are certain ones like well, those once custom ones, the horns with the like offset coaxial driver and stuff,
Yeah.
where I don't necessarily think that those should be like called out because yeah, it's a very unorthodox way of doing it. It's not necessarily what I would want, but I can see why some people would genuinely like the quirks that it has, and I can genuinely see why they might think that the things that they are doing are a unique and good way of doing things. And I think that that stuff is totally okay and should happen. Again, I would be pretty disappointed if the next show we went to was 200 rooms full of identical speakers that were all objectively perfect. That it's
Inject
the
that
thing
shit
that's
into my
hard.
veins.
The thing that's hard to kind
Andrew's
of
like, wow,
convey.
finally an audio show I can get behind.
Yes.
Wow, it's fixed. It's hard to convey if you've not been to this show, like the extreme range
Mhm.
of what's there.
Mhm.
There are so many things that exist in this kind of like unorthodox and very expensive, 50 grand speakers that are doing some weird stuff versus the $10 million just absolutely batshit insane options. Like
Yeah.
we're
I
not
actually
grouping all of these into one thing. And
the 9 million euro butt speaker, I I do have to say it did sound better than most of the other horn speakers that were there,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it did.
Like,
Yeah, I
it's
think so.
just that so if that's the laurels that you want to, if that's the flex that you want to make, right? I have these 9 million euro butt speakers that sound better than other horn speakers. Great. I have no problem with that. But it gets weird when people start to, wax poetic about the 9 million euro butt speaker sounding better than any other speaker system because it just flat out doesn't. And then it should be called out for not sounding better than
Yeah.
most competent speaker setups.
But I think the other thing is that a lot
Right.
of these companies know that because and it's hard to say how much of this is people genuinely being influenced and biased by the price of something to such a degree that their impressions do change because that does happen, or if it's a case of people not necessarily wanting or being afraid to say something negative about something really expensive.
Mhm.
Um, but I think a lot of the time these companies do price things higher because it almost shields them from criticism to a weird degree. Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of magazines and other reviewers and stuff that if your product is really expensive, they'll be a lot less likely to. They're much more likely to be completely blunt and picky about something which costs $300 than something that costs 30,000.
And if you don't like
Um,
it, your ears are broken.
Well, no, I think that is absolutely true, and it's because people on the high end don't really have a criteria for judging a product. Like,
Mhm.
flawed as the criteria might be, people shopping for, you know, headphones or speakers or IEMs under $500, at least in today's market, have a pretty consistent criteria for what they're looking for. Again, it might be a flawed criteria, but in the high end, there's no such consistency other than I think an individual subjective taste in looks and how much it costs.
Do you think there's a scenario where somebody is genuinely, I don't want to say enamored with the sound, but like part of the problem here is that nobody is comparing these things directly to one another. Like you
Like
are,
inexpensive things to expensive things, or
well, like nobody's taking 306p Mark IIs into the 9 million euro butt speaker room and being like, let's set these up side by side, see which one does better. And I think that's so you're kind of like wowed by everything to do with walking into that room, and
Mhm.
that's a big part of the problem. Because if it does sound reasonably competent, that's already that sets sort of the conditions for being able to enjoy your music through whatever is being played through those speakers, and then the rest of it is doing a lot of work to compel you to feel like, hey, this is a crazy worthwhile experience. um which in a way in a way it's almost kind of good that that crazy horn speaker was slightly better. It was pushing in the direction of being reasonable sounding, right? Because it does show that, like, at the very least, when people are making these things, they're making efforts to try and make them sound as good as they can. um And it's not just let's design something that looks like a butt because somebody who wants something that looks like a butt will buy it. um, so I don't know, Griffin. Maybe you had something else in mind with this question, and I was wondering if there's something that you wanted to
I
launch
mean,
into here.
I think I was thinking, today, obviously, a big part of what we're going to talk about is y'all's experience at Munich and kind
Hmm.
of what that left you with. Obviously, I didn't go to Munich, but I've just been, existing in online communities as you do and seeing, so I'm in at least one community where the basically all of the talk of products, nothing is under $1,000.
Mm.
And it differs from any other space I'm in that basically no one agrees on anything. Um, because there's again no consistent kind of rubric for judgment of a product. And obviously a lot of it is going to be subjective, but it's interesting how in the high-end spaces, because everything is so much worse, and this is a subjective value judgment on my part, it's kind of like what Cameron said, where people are much less likely to be critical because they don't have any coherent rubric to actually judge products against.
Mm.
So it's just kind of like this formless cloud of
Hmm.
people being not all that negative about things that sound terrible, but sounding crazily positive when they have a good experience, and no one really challenging them on that, or
Yeah, and then
like,
you come in
not
and
that your
ruin their
experience
day.
should be challenged, but like, um,
I also think
it's
there's a
just
little bit of
interesting to see.
the other way around from the sort of being afraid to criticize expensive stuff, where I think there's a lot of people that are almost afraid to say "No, this really, quite affordable things way better than the crazy expensive stuff." Like they're almost worried that people are going to go, "Oh, well, you could, your ears aren't good enough, or you don't have enough experience, or you're not whatever." Like I think there's quite a few people that are almost afraid to just come out and say like, "No, this $2,000 headphone does sound better than the $8,000 one." I think that it kind of goes both ways,
Yeah,
and that's a
I
bit of a
mean,
problem.
there are situations where there's backlash, but people do still do it. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
Doug
no, some
said
people
he,
do. I just think as a trend.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I do think there are people like HBB recently said some IEM is as good as the Storm, and
Oh
obviously
yeah,
Doug
I have
said
that one. I have to pick it up
the
from the post office.
yeah, and Doug said the same, or that it's better than the Storm, the Mega 5
Oh, for the
EST.
MegaFest. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of backlash from people in the water cooler thread and stuff like that.
I didn't even
Um,
see it. I don't.
what do you mean? We were
I,
both in the thread when right after that video went up, and there were people talking about it.
oh.
Yeah,
Is I'm maybe just totally misremembering the thread then.
it was a while
Um,
ago.
okay.
Yeah, it was like right after New York last year, I think.
Okay. Maybe I did participate. There's so much
It
that goes
wasn't a
on there
lot
that
of
I just
participation, but I
okay.
remember you being in the thread.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I just wish that kind of thing was more prevalent. I wish you know, like
I
because
remember having to defend Doug in the Storm thread, or what I thought was the
yeah,
Storm
that's
thread.
what I'm talking about.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just wish that kind of thing was more prevalent because most of the products that people kind of vaunt that are very expensive are just
Do
not
you
that
like
good
you
and
like the
also look
MegaFest?
bad.
You like the MegaFest better than the Storm, right?
I would say in some ways yes, in some ways no. It's more
That's kind of where
comfortable.
I'm at with it. Yeah, like
Yeah, it's more comfortable. I would say
yeah,
it's
yeah. No, it's less comfortable and
yeah, yeah, for you, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say the treble works better for me, but only in like the lower treble.
On the
I would
MegaFest?
Yeah, I would say the Mega 5's upper treble is actually a little bit more annoying
Yep.
than the Storm, but lower
Yeah.
treble is the opposite.
Yeah. Okay. Um yeah, I don't really have anything else on this particular topic. I think it's going to continue to be an issue for the industry.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking of is like kind of the opposite, where it's like, why does it seem? I've already kind of mentioned, I think, what my reasoning is, but why does it seem like the less expensive products are unilaterally better? And it's because people shopping at lower ranges tend to have less money, and therefore there's a kind of scarcity of the resource they can spend to get what they want. So they have to be more considered about their purchases. They
Well,
typically
there
have
is there
to
is also a question about like what constitutes better here, right? Like more
sound quality.
yeah, but even that that is up for debate because it's better in one sense is like more conforming to various different standards, or like you put it earlier, a given evaluations or a given evaluators sort of like well understood rubric
Yeah,
of
no, but
you
that's
know
what I mean. Like
yeah,
they're
but
as flawed as their idea of sound quality is, because a lot of it's rooted
yeah,
in imperfect measurements and stuff like that. It is at least coherent and internally consistent in their brain, even
yeah,
if it's not actually consistent.
right. But I want to
Um,
bring up, but this gives me occasion to bring up the bit about like something like the average not necessarily being as preferred as the individual preferences that people may have about a certain thing, right? The
yeah,
cockpit
sure.
example where like the seat, they designed the cockpit seat or something like
Yeah,
that
no,
so
no.
for the
I'm
average
not.
person it's been different
Oh,
I'm
than
not
okay.
others.
saying that like the sound quality rubric is the Harman target or is a certain
No,
target.
I know, I'm
I
saying you
just
could
mean
use
it's
anything that would have standards, and if those standards are adhered to.
no. I'm not even saying that. I'm more so
Okay.
saying that like people are understanding their potential purchases through the lens of measurements, and not always measurements in terms of adherence to a thing or
Yeah.
to you know
Because I think you
it's
can also
like this.
see the opposite problem where they do aim for general, let's say, competence to a given target, like the Harman target, for example. Then you end up with a race to the bottom with a lot of these products that just sound like ass. So it's like, the idea of like, well, are are is the low end necessarily better? I think on average, and I'm certainly of the opinion that yes, it is, but only insofar as it is more competent for achieving whatever people think is gonna do well, given the evaluative standards that people have at
Yeah,
that
but that's
you know um
yeah.
as far as
That
like
but
the
that's
actual
that's
individual
all I'm
enjoyment.
saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. As far
Yeah,
as the
yeah.
individual enjoyment that somebody's gonna get out of a thing, right? Like I think there's a very good argument that if you it is still advantageous to you if you do have money to look at all ends of the spectrum, right? Um, to say, okay, I have
Yeah,
$2,000 to
yeah, of
spend on a
course.
product. I'm gonna also consider U6T or whatever else, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I wasn't saying anything against that. I was, yeah,
yeah,
mostly just saying that the people at the lower end have had to do more thinking before buying and do more reading before buying. And sometimes they're reading the wrong things or getting the wrong ideas about whatever they're looking at.
yeah,
But in general, because they are that way about the purchases that they're going to be making, the manufacturers understand that having those things ironed out is going to result in sales more than going for something crazy would at those prices. Whereas going for something crazy at high prices is typically a lot. I wouldn't say a lot lower of a risk, but it less often results in a lack of sales.
right.
Blaine is
I just
saying
have to
I
address
ignored
something in
his
chat
scathing
here.
critique. Blaine, what did I ignore? I
Should
didn't.
should
I
we
scrolled up. I couldn't find the message.
let's do a extended chat session here with Spicy with Peppers. How does that
All
feel
right,
for you guys?
that
Should
sounds
we do
good.
that?
Do you guys have you guys heard anything that you want to share impressions on?
Yeah, but we also have video coming out with a lot of those impressions. I don't know if we want to
Yeah.
spoil any
Wait,
of
wait
that.
till the video.
Um,
We won't spoil too much just yet.
I mean, I
Just in
have
case.
one thing I want to talk about just briefly
sure, yeah.
because
Yeah.
the
I
this
I just
thing.
had. Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
Oh,
let's
okay.
definitely get to that. I just want to note something in chat here. Mark D says it's time to bother Andrew about his decision to not speak on the KSC 75. All right, it's terrible. Moving on.
Walked into that one.
Yeah.
Blaine, what did I ignore? Oh, scathing critique. Scathing critique is that you keep contrasting the scenario of every speaker is a Genelec versus current circus as an indictment of the idea of I'm not quite sure what you're
No, no,
meaning.
no.
There are massively diverse ways to make good speakers. Okay, I agree. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that high-end audio should necessarily be constrained to only things that are good, both because that there are some people that are just they do just genuinely want kind of wacky stuff, and those people should be catered to, but also because you kind of this is going to sound weird. The good stuff is only impressive if it's in contrast to something. And also, how the hell do you like police it? There's a very big difference between someone who's kind of gone their own way to do something, be it a headphone or an amp or a speaker or whatever, versus someone who is just pulling the wool over people's eyes. I think that's what I was trying to separate is the snake oil from the esoteric.
Yeah. Yeah. But I still think it's important to call it the esoteric stuff as being stupid if it is.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I agree with the
We should
first
allow
part
Wilson
of
to
that.
exist in order to show how good we are by comparison. Oh
Okay,
dear.
that part I wouldn't say I agree with, but I think it's very funny and it's like a very like
Good
Chad
meme.
position
No,
to take.
but at this show, the Wilsons
But
are some of the better ones. Like, let's just put
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
they are.
yeah.
I do think the first point though about some people just like wacky stuff. Like I don't know that that's actually the case, and this is something that I try
I mean,
not
there are
to
people
say
that
in
only have
conversations
stats.
with people when I'm talking to them online, but I do really question how much what someone states as their preference is actually their preference. And I think it's especially true of people in the high end where they don't actually know, where they have an idea, I think, of the experiences they enjoy and what they like about music, but I don't think they really know what about the transducers they're using provide that experience. Um, so I'm actually not sure that having wacky speakers, or I'm not sure that wacky speakers would actually be preferable if the good speakers still highlight similar aspects of the music that they enjoy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the people not necessarily actually. It's not that I mean, it's a weird thing to say because it sounds really snotty when you say like people don't
Right, yeah,
actually know
no, it
what they
sounds
like or they
straight up
don't know what their preference.
gaslighting. Yeah,
It
yeah.
does, and to some degree, I'm like, okay, well, actually, yeah, that like whatever people choose to like for whatever reason is what they like, and you shouldn't really argue with it. But at the same time, I do also feel that there are a lot of people that convince themselves that they like something because it's expensive, because they spent lots of money on it, or because other people have told them that that's what they should like. Um, and that kind of goes in all different directions, not just at the crazy expensive stuff, but there's been examples of
For sure.
headphones that measure very well in a particular scenario that people have then told you, no, you need to like these headphones.
Okay.
Not just those ones, but like so there have been some Dan Clarks where it's like, if you ask in certain communities, they'll say, no, if you don't like those headphones, your preferences are wrong and you need to
Well, no,
reevaluate that.
but also they'll say things like,
Or that's not actually your preference or
yeah,
whatever. But
yeah. Or if there's like -2 dB at like 30 hertz. Oh, yeah, you got to fix that. Then you'll like it.
yeah.
It's just some of the craziest stuff.
I think actually going back to what I think Griffin said, where a lot of the time people aren't actually comparing stuff across a broad range quite a bit. I think it happens more so with headphones, which is good, but with speakers in particular, like how often are you going to see people, like you say, comparing JBL 305 whatever's to
Yeah.
really expensive speakers, or even if you are actually trying to compare stuff, how often is it actually that they're in the same room? That's the problem in and of itself. Is
This is
I've
why
heard the
even in the
same
best
speakers.
best case scenario,
Yeah,
it's still the hallways of fools.
it's a real challenge, and I don't know what the solution is with speakers. Because with headphones, at least you can go to a can jam or
It's
go to a
true.
meetup, and despite the limitations, you can just A/B stuff across. There's 10,000 stuff on that table, and then there's $200 headphones on that table,
Yeah.
and you can go and you can put each of them on. Whereas at Munich, whilst Munich is so much better than any other show just for the
It's
rooms that
yeah.
things are set up in, it's not even close. Like I would never bother with any other sort of like hotel-based shows, just because having even though I might be unfamiliar with the rooms, just having heard some of the setups at Munich and then hearing the same speakers and same setups at other hotel room-based shows, pointless, utterly pointless to do it anywhere else.
Yeah.
The fact that you are still not actually comparing things in a like-for-like scenario, and I don't really know if there is an easy way to do it, that's a problem. And I don't
You
really know
know,
what the solution is.
this might be kind of like shitty of them to do, but like Genelec should try and get some of the other speaker setups right next to theirs, right? I mean, like, auditory memory is crap, but like, it is. I was mentioning this to Cameron, like when you go from those, or like you try out whatever the speaker setups are in those sort of speaker room hallways, and then you go to the Genelec room, you realize that the experiences you thought were good before are just some sort of weird coloration, and you're like, okay, that's
And I mean, the thing that I do want to be clear on with the Genelec thing, though, is that whilst Genelec, just their speakers from an engineering standpoint are fantastic, one of the things that does muddy the waters slightly, and this is still not at all a slight to Genelec, in fact, it's me saying, like, why the hell aren't other people doing this, is that they apply room correction. And every single setup that I've heard at Munich that is using room correction, like a couple of years ago, I think it was not Trinov, it's like a cheaper one. I can't remember what it's called. Lingdorf? Was it Lingdorf? I think it was Lingdorf. And like every single setup that was using just room correction sounds better than basically everything else that isn't.
Mhm,
And so Genelec's at a huge advantage because they use room correction.
mhm.
So it's a little hard to see how much better the speakers themselves might be just because the room correction alone is making things so much better. But yeah, that's a little bit of a challenge. But
That's
it's also
Brandon says, no, not room correction. You're not a true purist.
yeah. I mean, I said in the main video, which will be up this week, like if it doesn't matter what speakers you have, if you're sitting at a desk, if you're in a dedicated 2-channel room with amazing treatment and everything, if you're not using room correction, you're missing out on a huge amount of performance.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as a perfect room. It does not exist. There is no such thing as a perfect speaker. And I mean, even just the positioning alone, like one of the best examples at Munich of how the same speakers can sound so different is that a couple years ago, AudioQuest and
Oh yeah.
Nordost, two cable manufacturers, ironically, they had rooms that was one apart. So there was someone else in between them, but then they were in two identical rooms, and they were using the same speakers, which are also Wilson's. And you go into the Nordost room, and it sounded fine. It was good setup. It sounded decent and everything. And then you go into the AudioQuest room, and it sounded fantastic. They were
AudioQuest
using the
usually has
same
the best
speakers.
rooms in some of the best rooms in the like.
Yeah, they
Not
just
for any of the
set up
cable
their rooms
bullshit.
properly.
They just have good rooms. Yeah.
They just position things right. They space the
Yeah.
speakers properly. They have a little bit of treatment and stuff, and they
Yeah.
just dial it in. And as a result, it sounds so much better than the vast majority. Even this year, they had some pretty modest, just like basic tower speakers. Um, I don't know what they
Small.
were, but they
They're
looked like,
small.
if you
Yeah.
had to guess the price, you'd say like to 2 or 3K maybe.
Yep.
Like kind of smaller than these Triangle Borea BR8s, the brown ones. And yeah, like that sounded better than most of the other rooms, even the ones that cost a couple million,
Yeah.
just because they
Hey,
set it up right.
most of them didn't sound as good as that the DIY section, the subwoofer from GSS.
Yeah.
It's like just this
Yeah.
tiny little box of a sub. It's like a rectangle.
It's a
Almost looks like a
boxer
sound bar.
bass.
Yeah.
It did look a little bit like a soundbar, and they had
Yeah.
just 2 desktop Neumann monitors and then this
Yeah.
crazy subwoofer thing, which is like tiny, and that sounded better than most of the rooms upstairs.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Sick.
Yeah.
Hell
Anyways,
yeah.
we'll have
Oh,
more
by
of
the way,
that.
was ASCII Lab or ASCII Lab there?
Didn't see them, no.
Maybe.
We wanted to go
Um,
and see Key Audio, was the ones that make the cardioid speakers,
Oh
but they
yeah,
were
no,
in
you
the bit
didn't.
with the no, because they didn't have like their own just dedicated room. They were in the bit with the artist that was visiting, and you had to like get tickets and stuff like that. So
That's
couldn't do that one,
annoying.
unfortunately.
yeah.
Yeah, I really
Annette
want to
or
hear
whatever her
this.
name was, right?
Yeah,
I
Annette,
don't know any of
I can't remember her
Annette
full name. No.
Askvik.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
don't know. Yeah. Wasn't Steven Wilson.
No, I mean Stephen Wilson one last year was fantastic. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was a bit
Anyways,
different.
let's talk about your XO that you have there.
Okay, so full disclosure, I haven't been able to wear this for like the last week
Oh, because you're
because
yeah.
anytime I put a headphone on my head, I start getting my wisdom teeth are flaring up. So I'm getting those removed in a little over a week, but I get pretty intense jaw and head pain whenever I wear a headphone. I did get a chance to hear this for a few days before that started happening though, so the impressions will be based on that. Um, I'm not sure I can say anything bad about the build quality or the comfort. Like the looks maybe a little bit weird on the cups, but I think it's maybe just lacking a little bit of flexibility and kind of softness for this top thing. This is very rigid and like
Yeah.
stiff. It's like barely a pad. So I just wish it was kind of replaced with like a simple nylon strap or something like that, something that actually conformed to the shape of my head. I do love the ear comfort on these designs though. This is the first time I've had one of these at home and been able to spend more than like 2 minutes with one, and the ear comfort really is exceptional. And I think Dan deserves credit for that.
Could replace that leather strap with a Capra strap.
It wouldn't do the kind of
Oh, right. Okay.
stretchy thing, which is necessary. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to see something just kind of simpler and less over considered. um, Sonically, yeah, it's like I was having a conversation with Andrew about this briefly, where I feel like if something on a graph looks like it measures well, people are hesitant to say that it is
Mm.
outright bad and it is a, not good headphone. And I'm not going to go that far because I think some people will probably enjoy this, probably mostly old people. I do not enjoy it. It is a more joyless experience listening to this than anything else I have in the house currently.
That's why I
And
like it.
no, see, like I understand what you mean. I think a lot of people have this idea that neutral and boring are synonymous. Obviously, you and I have both kind of tried to fight that narrative.
Hmm.
This was boring because it made the music sound weird, but
Mm.
not in a particularly good way. Like the colorations it has, and it does have colorations, are not good. The mid range is thin. Male vocals sound translucent and a little bit shouty, a little bit
Mm.
kind of ice picky.
That's because
Electric
of that
guitars have
2.5 kilohertz bump that it has.
well, it's also scooped in the low mids.
Yeah, of course. Harman scoop.
Yeah.
I like when I saw the measurements, I was like, Griffin's gonna hate this. Like I knew right away.
Yeah. So the AMTS typically works for me, actually. So
Hmm.
the Dan Clark Stealth, the Dan Clark
Yeah.
E3, and even the Expanse to an extent, like sounded fine in the treble for me, like good, honestly.
Mm.
Um, this is the first one where it sounds bad in the treble. And it's
Yeah.
not because of the AMTS. It's because Dan decided to add a bunch of upper treble for some stupid reason. And now it's like a thin
That's
mid
why I
range.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Fucking
I was gonna say this is one of the instances where the mid treble sounds so much better to me. Like it doesn't have this sort of mid
yeah.
treble stridency and harshness that I
Yeah.
get from some of the
I would say
other like
the low treble and mid treble on this is solid. I would say
yeah.
even the mid treble is maybe even a little bit recessed. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
at least
but it
at
doesn't
least
have
on my
like
head.
weird imbalances the way that some of the other like for me, the Expanse had some pretty significant mid treble stridency for me because the AMTS didn't work for me.
Hmm.
Um, and to a certain extent, even the stealth. Blaine, you and I had we when Blaine came and visited, and we listened to the stealth and we did the measurements of the stealth and all this stuff. It was exactly the same experience where it's like it measures like bang on, but it sounded harsh. And this one didn't have that problem.
Yeah. So this one has thin mids, good low treble, fine mid treble, bad upper treble. And then the bass, it doesn't sound as prominent as it would look on a measurement, but it's still enough to where it makes
It's
it
slow.
sounds too distinct relative to the mid-range. So
Mm.
there's like a cloudiness and kind of a haze and kind of a slowness that permeates everything, while it still has a thin mid-range and like a overall, I think, kind of like overly silken kind of character to it, where it just sounds very like lispy and I already said translucent, but yeah, it's just kind of lacking any sort of weight or tactility. And I'm not necessarily saying in a dynamic sense, because I think it has some aggressiveness to it that I would say it means it's more dynamic than I think the Expanse was for me.
Mhm.
Whereas the Expanse was more just like coherently bloated and kind of muddy. Um, this one just has more of a kind of edge to it that is unpleasant to listen to. And what sucks is that, like, for most of the music I listened to, it was basically just like a worse version of the MM500,
Mm.
but with better comfort. So, like, I would rather use this headphone, but I would absolutely need to EQ basically all parts of it,
Mhm.
which I feel like isn't why people buy this kind of headphone. Like, it's not why,
Right.
like, people don't buy a DCA headphone to EQ it.
No, they
They
buy it
buy
because of
it
the
because they think it's
measurements.
going to sound
Yeah.
perfect out of the box or whatever. And
Yeah.
it sounds wrong in every part of the frequency response in such a way that, like, if you're like an intermediate graph sniffer, is not going to be obvious to you even. Like,
Mm.
I feel like the analysis of sound needs to move beyond the Harman target, or transposing the Harman target to the 5128 or whatever the hell he's doing, because this just doesn't sound very good. And it's not just about the Harman target sounding bad. It's about, because it doesn't, like, it's about this not really sounding like the Harman target.
Okay,
Now,
I was
why
going to say
is that?
because I quite like the sound of it, at least at Munich. I've only spent like 5 minutes with it, but it was one of the better DCAs for me. But what I also will say is it does not sound like it was Harman tuned. So, like, I think there's definitely something that's not gone right or
Well,
doesn't work with the current methodology of just transposing the Harman onto the
yeah, but the problem is
5128.
nobody actually knows what Harman sounds like, right?
Oh, yes, that too. But
So
it doesn't sound like most of the other Harman, like, of many of the other Harman-tuned both IEMs and other headphones, or just EQing other headphones to Harman, like, generally those sound quite a bit
Mm,
more close to each other than the
than this
EXO
one.
does. Like, the
Yeah.
EXO sounds notably different.
Mhm.
so here's what I'll say. I think just because I've been swimming in a mire of measurements, trying to get an idea for our new preference bounds, I think I actually have a pretty good idea of what Harman sounds like.
Hmm.
Um, and I can't share anything on stream just yet, but it is quite a bit warmer than this, but also quite a bit brighter in the low treble.
Yeah,
And
around, well, you say low treble. I would say, well,
in
it's
mid
yeah,
treble, like,
yeah,
yeah,
8,
7
7, 8K.
kilohertz.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but what's interesting about that is all the Harman targets essentially actually measure the same until you get to like 6 kilohertz.
Mhm.
Um, so like the base difference we see between 2015 and 2013, and like 2015 and 2018 to 2013 is actually a very small difference when you use the headphone responses. Um, and there's no real difference in the ear gain, which I think would surprise people. Moving to the Welty pinna is what was responsible for that dip in the ear gain. Um, I think this is just a thin headphone with a bass boost, and I don't know. I feel like if you like IEMs, this might be for you, but I feel like if you want like the actual sound of the Harman target, I think you'd be better served with a K371. Or honestly, even maybe something like the whatchamacallit, the FIO FT1 or
Mhm.
something like that. Like, I'm not saying they're all perfectly adherent, but I think they kind of nail the spirit of the target more than this one does.
Right.
Um, Yeah.
It's
Dan's
interesting.
Dan's overfitting based on his experiments, and the upper treble spike he added just make for the opposite of what I want in a headphone, and I think something that doesn't really fit in with what his customers are looking for.
Yeah. So I did hear it at Munich as well, and I also like my impression of it was closer to Cameron's. I thought it was one of his better headphones. So, well, one of his better open back headphones. And
Mm.
actually, Doug's review of it is pretty close to how I felt about it. Where the thing that I felt was contentious, most contentious, was the upper treble, right? Like if you reduce that feature, um, it would be probably more palatable for a wider range of people. But the people who, to be clear, it's not the problem that I had with it, right? I didn't, like I was like, okay, for people again, older listeners or whatever, people who want more of the sort of like upper treble air, like that's going to be totally fine. Um, fuck off with yourself.
It continues to be true.
So I was gonna say that was my problem with it.
That
My
it's
like
too
personally.
scooped.
Well, it's the combination of the scoop with the forward 2.5 kilohertz thing that makes it sound a bit lean and clangy. Like it actually works great for instrumental music, and that's what I happen to be auditioning. uh,
Mm.
what I was using with it for much of it, and for that, it actually sounded pretty good. Really good, I would say. Then I started using some tracks with vocals, and that's where things started to sound a bit on the
Falls apart.
leaner side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think that if if um if you look at the product line, I guess. Well, there's two things. One is if you look at the product line for what he doesn't have any open backs that are like that. Like like the other open backs are kind of rolled off in the treble, or they have this massive upper bass bloat. Um, and so there isn't anything in that lineup with that style um, that has this more like, I don't know, clarity focused kind of upper mid presentation. Um, and so to have this in there is good. I think to have this as one of the options is good.
It's
The other
surprisingly different from a lot of his other stuff.
surprisingly different from a lot of the other stuff. The other side of it,
I
and again,
wouldn't
I
say it's
want to.
that different.
It's not different from the X
Has upper
from the
treble.
for their open
Oh.
backs. It is
So
quite
so
different.
that's the thing you haven't liked about his prior designs, correct, Cameron?
That's been one of the main things, yeah.
Yeah,
As
Got
I
it.
found them too, yeah, a little bit blunted because of the lack
yeah,
of upper treble.
So what's interesting
exactly.
is I have the same complaint, but it's not
This
that
goes
it
too far the
has
other
a
way.
reduction in upper treble, it's that it has a reduction in upper treble and has a ton of bass.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the thing, right? I actually think it's good that this product exists, and I actually think this product will do well for him because it is also one of the few open back headphones that has a bass boost in that sort of more sub bass band. And forget people actually understanding what the sense of speed or dynamism or any sort of that kind of like note weight. Forget people having any sense of coherency for mid range. If people are in scoring favorably for the wow effect that they get from headphones, I think this is going to deliver that more so than any of his other open back headphones. Yeah, I agree that it has some colorations there, like notable colorations, but I think
I
that this
wouldn't say they're different colorations than I noticed on like I would say the upper treble is definitely different from the other ones, no question. But
back in
like
two
the
seconds.
E3 also had thin mids.
It's
The
a close
Stealth
back. I'm talking
also
about his
has
open
thin mids.
backs.
The Expanse also has thin mids. Like they all kind
The
of have
Expanse
that kind
sounds
of
shouty for, well, I guess it's just a slightly
well,
different
it's
spot.
instead of 2K, it's 4K. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's an
yeah.
elevation
Yeah, I
still
don't know, to me, the
offsetting
Expanse
with
sounds
scooped
totally
lower
different.
mids, but it's just in a different spot.
Yeah, no, to me, this one sounds totally different from the Expanse. Like, I actually much
Um,
preferred this one over the Expanse.
yeah, I would
Um,
say it sounds different. I just wouldn't say it sounds better.
oh, I think it's way better than the Expanse, personally. Um, but again, it's like, it's because it has more of the wow effect, I think, than the in the sense that those color, like, okay, we talk about colorations. Fucking like, what is a coloration, right? Like, um if you look at what people actually preferred in the preference research, like you've been alluding to, it's like, yeah, people have a preference for certain colorations. It's like
I
that is.
am I am excited for so like the what's great about the bounds is like the way
Oh, hold on.
Brandon's
I just want to note one thing.
what's
So
up?
Dan, despite okay, so like I've talked to him at length about a lot of this stuff, and like
I'm aware.
there are things that I very much disagree with him about as far as like methodology, and also Sean, right? Like Sean is apparently working with him on, or they've connected on what they want to do for that, transposing of the target and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I again, like I have a difference of opinion when it comes to the methodology there, but one thing he said to me, which I thought was interesting, I want to sort of get your guys' take on, which is that the closer you are to neutral, the more you notice when things are not. If you take something that is like, again, Empire Years doesn't have to worry about this problem.
No, I think that's a sensible take in some
Yeah.
respects.
So like if you hear that there's something just a little bit out, in one band versus the rest of it, which might be like, this is a hypothetical scenario, right? Um if everything is neutral, but one band, say 2 kilohertz is off, you're going to notice that 2 kilohertz much more strongly than if it had several other colorations throughout the rest of the response. And to give kind of like a further example of this, I don't know what the fuck is going on with the Carbon 2. That is one of the weirdest sound. I don't understand what's wrong with that headphone. Like
I
you
haven't
could
seen measurements of it yet,
I
and
haven't
I'm
either, but it's like
very
you listen to it
curious to.
and you're like, what? Okay, it sounds kind of wrong in the bass, but it also sounds wrong in the mids, and it also sounds wrong in the upper mids, and it also sounds wrong in the treble. Like it's just I have no idea.
I
Well,
assume it's an
I was
overly sub-bass focused shelf. I assume the 1K is still hot, and I assume there's still some paperiness in the low treble.
so like
Here's the
it's
thing. It might measure
notably
well.
worse on the carbon one.
It's so much worse. And I don't understand
And
why.
I think Andrew in the video he sort of said exactly what I was thinking, which is that when a headphone is closer to neutral, it's a lot easier to pick out the individual things that
Oh yeah,
are
that's what I
not
was
quite
just
right.
saying to Griffin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, but yeah, with the carbon two, it's like it's really hard to listen to it and go, oh, this is the bit that needs some work. It's like it's
Mhm.
hard to know where to begin. There's just
Well, so
a
that's the
lot
thing.
that's weird about that
It it
headphone.
it, it hard to know. It being hard to know where to begin is kind of what sticks in my craw about this take, which is that no headphone has ever arrived to me, and there's only one problem, right?
No,
Like,
but this has got a lot.
Well, okay, but how about this? Even if it doesn't have only, I would agree with you. There is no such thing as a headphone that has only one problem, right?
Mhm.
But there are headphones where their problems are lesser, right? Like their problems are not ones that are, you know, like you can have two headphones, one of which is generally close to neutral. You can still hear the various different colorations and deviations. And then you have the other headphone, which is not even remotely close, right?
and it's a little harder to pick them out.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I understand the take, and I think, yeah, the magnitude deviation
the magnitude
from, I guess,
deviation.
neutral,
Exactly.
having an effect on which colorations jump out to you and how obvious they are, I think makes some sense. I just think it's kind of an easy, convenient thing to hide behind
Well,
when
this is
when
also
you're
in the situation where
overfitting.
if you're not measuring it and you're just listening to it, like I think that's where this take really gains some ground as well, because it's like, like if you're measuring it and you're like, oh well, this is clearly forward at 2.5 kilohertz, right? That's the problem area, or at the upper treble or whatever else, right? But if you're just listening to
Yeah,
it, it's
and honestly, I think there's a tendency of reviewers to kind of try and find the one problem instead of
Mm.
giving equal attention to all of the
I
problems.
I do think that there are headphones that
Um,
have only one problem as far as their general applicability to a wide range of people, right? Like I think there are
Yeah.
many where it's like if you did one change,
yeah,
it would
Well, it's
be
like the
far
Aria
more
Unveiled is
palatable.
probably quite a good
Yeah,
example.
that is
If
the
the Aria
perfect
Unveiled, if you
example.
take down the was it 5K, it gets really close to what I think is pretty ideal for a lot of people.
Now, it wouldn't be perfect
There,
for any one specific person. You could find all
no,
kinds
there
of
is
other
no
things you'd
headphone
want
that's
to do.
going to be like that.
Yeah,
It's
you'd
it
add a
would
bass
end up
shelf or
quite
whatever else, right?
reasonable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
but
all kinds of other things
it's
you could do.
yeah, but it's overall really close, and it's like this is Vara Unveiled, for example. Like the one issue with that for me in terms of what I like absolutely would change is the fact that the ear gain peaks closer to 4K, which just doesn't sit right with me.
Mm.
Um, there's some other ones like I would change the tilt of the low frequency area overall, but that is still generally a hell of a lot closer to a generally correct sounding signature than, like, for me, an Imanis or the Carbon 2 or something. And
Sorry, what the fuck? Listener's arm is holding money and his mic is holding camera.
oh yeah, on the stream it looks like it's sort of balancing. Yeah, like there's certain headphones where there's just so much that is consecutively weird that it's really hard to pick out
Mm,
what any one thing. Like you can kind of really hyper focus on one thing and go, okay, I think yeah, the 1.5K is a bit too hot and stuff, but it's really hard to say this particular bit is wrong. It's not that we're
Mm,
saying that there's only one problem or anything, or we're trying to find the one
sure.
problem. It's that when there's just so much that is so weird,
mhm.
it's really hard to even start to work out what actually is weird, other than that just the whole thing sounds weird.
For
Yeah.
sure.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
I definitely, just to get back to the XO, I really need to get one of those in because I'm very curious um to test it myself in sort of like my own environment, because that is the other thing. It's like I was at that show listening to headphones that I know what they sound like, you know, at home, and I know what the problem areas are. At that show, I was less inclined to care. So it really does change you kind of take off the evaluative scrutiny hat when you're there, because you're just there to kind of, you know, have the experience. And there's something a little bit more, I don't know, there's something a little bit more like you're not there necessarily like hyper focused on trying to find the flaws. You're just trying to get a general sense.
Mm,
um
Yeah.
yeah, I get you.
with that said, I do run it through my disqualification tracks. And I was kind of surprised that for this show, more passed than at previous shows, like more the new products that I heard passed my disqualifiers. Like the UFT7 obviously passed that, like the test tracks for me. The new flagship from Alan passed it, which
Mm.
I mean, not ideal, not perfect in the treble, but
I mean, that one's a pre-alpha, like
pre-alpha,
very
right?
much prototype.
And the
Yeah.
bass on that was remarkably interesting. Like I would say I haven't heard a bass like that in an I was gonna say bass like an open back, but in this case, it's one that doesn't have a filter, right? It's just
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah, it's
it's
know.
just doing
MV1
acoustic.
exists.
no, this is different. Um,
Okay.
It really did nail
yeah,
the low end of
but
things.
again, who knows what it'll actually be because
Mm,
pre-alpha, right?
sure.
The ATB Berlin or no Architect, not ATB, Architect Berlin. Their the new planar, the high end planar that they have. That passed all of my disqualifier tracks. Um, I think that the treble, I don't know. That's going to be an
Is that
interesting one to see
Klaus
how it
Heinz as
performs.
well?
Klaus Heinz, yeah. It
Yeah.
actually, he showed me the measurement because they had the 5 and 2/8 right there, and it measured. I took a brief gander at it, and I was thinking, okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it too much, but
All right. Well,
um,
there was one more thing I wanted to say,
yeah.
which is
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
the good thing about the bounds, and this is how I'm stealing Blaine's phrasing here, is that the Harman target has existed for a while, but you don't see the error bars. You don't see
Oh yeah,
not
yeah.
only the range of possible equally or roughly equally preferred responses that people would take, but you don't know how the Harman target sits relative to those. So, for example, you don't know
Yeah.
if the Harman target in, say, the lower mids sits in the center of the
Hmm.
listener preference range or towards the very bottom.
Hmm.
It actually sits towards the very bottom. Like
Yeah.
the Harman target is easily the least low mid-rangey sound that was preferred by listeners, and it also had the most 3 to 5 kilohertz of any of the headphones tested.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
when you're overfitting for that target, you're targeting basically the least low
Yeah.
mid-rangey and most upper mid-rangey response you possibly can while still being preferred. And there's an argument that going for something with a little bit more low mid-range and a little bit less upper mid-range, mid-range would actually maybe be a safer bet.
I think it is. So just to be clear, your sort of complaint here that you're raising, which I think is a good one, is the there is so much sort of debate and uh, confusion around the project of transposing, Harman from Gauss to 5 and 2/8 when really it's a false premise. Like the issue we shouldn't be trying to do that in the first place. Like you know, um,
Overfitting for the most preferred response in that study means you have to get it exactly right,
mhm.
and any small deviation can tip you
It's e yeah,
outside of the preference
because it's
window.
exactly.
And this thing
Which is
having, at least to my ear, a little bit less than Harman actually does in the low mids, and a little bit more than it does in the upper mids, is enough to knock it outside of the preference window for me. And then it has
yeah.
a bunch of upper treble, which you guys
And
already
to be
know.
clear, that's the preference window from Harman, right? So like
Yes,
what we're
from the
talking about
same
here
research that he
is not
that produced the curve that
yeah.
people
So
obsess over.
that's we need to put that out. I mean, basically this is I think that yes, there's confusion and erroneous choices made on the like manufacturer side of things, and I have spoken to manufacturers about this to try and you know push things in a direction that is specifically
The
not
demand
as strongly
is
overfitting,
still
but it
a big
doesn't
issue, though.
matter because of how people evaluate and what looks good on paper,
Yep,
and you know it's a problem. It's
yep,
a problem, and then it's almost like an inertia of it as well. That just is
yep.
as soon as you say
Yeah.
something to the contrary, you are, you know, you're rolling the ball uphill. But we have to.
Here's a weird one. I mean, it's like this is interesting talking about the lower mids and the 3K bit because like we were with the Aperio GSE. Um, it's got a little more lower mids than the Harman target does, and a little bit less 3K than the Harman target does. Like, I mean, with that one, quite frankly, making a result that just gets to Harman exactly would have been something that we could have done. But
Mhm,
both myself and the other people that were involved in terms of development and testing, because I wanted to make sure that some of the particular things I was trying to do worked across at least a decent range of heads.
mhm,
Um, didn't like that as much. We like there is a version that is literally just Harman tuned,
mhm.
but I'm really looking forward to when you guys put the thing you've been working on out. I think that
We are
it's going to
too.
encounter
Trust
some
me, we are too. We are
But
very
yeah.
but the, the
impatient and
the
anxious.
challenge with it,
But
like we've talked about this
yeah,
before. By the way, let's have a quick pepper round, guys, in chat. The
Give us some
challenge
spice.
with it is going to get people to act is getting people to understand it and use it because like it's the kind of thing that we all want to use because we understand it and we know what it's from, right? Like and we know also like the it's one of those things where it's like initially it's so like what the fuck is this? But then as soon as you start using it and you keep using it, you're like, "Oh my god, this is incredible." And it's to the point where like I was trying to give uh Jude a quick sneak peek at some of it, right? Because Jude's super into the whole measurement side of things. And it's like
leaking our
there's
private stuff.
no, I mean it
Uh,
was it was like, oh, just take a peek at what we're working on with preference bounds, right? Obviously I didn't send him the data yet. Um but it's when even those of us who are the most seasoned, measurement focused people are going to have trouble with it. Um at least initially, right? I think we need to do
yeah, I
something to
think the
make it
big
so that
trouble is just going to be that it looks a little weird relative to what
yeah,
we
but
have
that is
now.
a big
So
trouble. Like that's something like we need to figure out. I think we need to figure out how can we make it so that whatever the visualization for it is very clear and very
Well,
easy
I
to
think
understand.
it's more about the messaging because the methodology behind it is good and makes a lot of sense. It's going to be a case
Yeah, and
because if you
blame
just said like,
sacrifice his
"Hey,
wrist
trust
for it.
us," if you just sort of put it out and go, "Hey guys, trust us, this is great," then it's
Yeah,
no different from any other reviewer target curve, even though
yeah.
it's not an actual curve. Um, but if you explain why it's come to this,
Oh
how
yeah.
you got to this, and what
You
it's
and you
actually
have to
into it,
keep
then
doing it. You have to keep
yeah,
explaining it
yeah, you
until
have to.
people, are able to take it on board. And I do think also there is a merit in starting it off in a way where the on-ramp is highly accessible, like rather than being like, okay, this is what we're using now. It's better. Here are the reasons why it's better. It's more like, okay, here's how this looks on these other versions that you might be used to. Okay, and now here's how now let's move it over to this new one. Here's how it looks with this new one. So people have a sense of, okay, this is what we thought good was before. Now here it is relative to the better understanding of what good is. So they can kind of be, they can go down the garden path with you and then finally understand it. But again, it's going to be quite the effort. I think we're going to need to do a lot of content around it, which I'm personally fired up for. Like, to me,
Yeah,
this is
no,
exciting.
yeah,
This
same.
is the paradigm, changing stuff that we need to do. So
Yeah,
I'm
as
looking
far as
forward to
I'm
it.
concerned, this is the thing that bridges the gap between one, the fact that the bounds we use currently aren't actually based on DF. They're like just, abstractions of the filter values,
Yeah, it was the original assumptions around segmentation.
but it's also tailored to the rigs we use
Hmm.
and tailored to make them or make the results as relevant to humans as the research can possibly support.
Yeah.
Um, I think that is going to be a big step forward in general. But I'm also excited for that to be done so we can move on from rigs eventually. Like, because
Yeah.
I don't see much of a possibility for improvement based on existing research based on rig measurements
I know what you mean.
after
This is
this is
why
done.
I'm really disappointed that I wasn't able to get my HRTF and the
Mm.
Vienna thing fell through. By the way, the story there is the guy who was going to do the measurements last minute. He got sick, but he was still willing, or some. It was something where he might have. I think he went to the hospital, and
Mhm.
but he was still so determined to try and make it happen.
It's like, I can get myself
Yeah,
discharged
yeah,
for
yeah.
a couple
Yeah,
hours.
yeah, no, that's
Like,
literally what he
just
said,
everyone get
and I was
better.
like, "Dude, like, we'll do this another time, like, I don't wanna be responsible for, anything getting worse."
Well, hopefully
So,
next year, if we're in Vienna anyway, then
yeah, that's well, I
I mean, there's also
maybe
other places you can get it done. Like you
yeah,
can get
yeah,
it done in the UK probably if you wanted to, Cameron.
if there is a place that you know of, let me know, and I'll
Yeah,
try and make that
Imperial
happen.
College in London, Dyson School of
I
Engineering.
don't know if I have any. Oh wait, it's Dyson.
I don't think it's that Dyson. I mean, it might be. I don't know. It's just
Okay, if
called
it's to do with
the
Dyson,
Dyson
I've got
School of
my
Engineering.
brother works for Dyson, so I can
Yeah,
chat
no, I
to him.
remember.
But
No, I don't think it's that Dyson. It
okay,
could be.
okay,
I don't know. But
yeah,
yeah, no. There's a college in the UK that they measured the HRTF we use for the older Grossier that we use.
mhm.
right. Because I mean, there
Um,
are some places like Southampton University, which is right near me. They've got acoustics institute, and they've got some fantastic stuff, including a
right.
massive proper anechoic chamber, uh,
That's
which
pretty
they
cool.
actually say that would be able to use. But the problem is that
Yeah,
getting
I
in
mean,
there is basically
if you ever want to
impossible.
do content in the anechoic chamber, you should. I feel like that's always a
The
very
door is
fun thing
technically
to explore.
open. It's more just a logistics thing
Well, the
because
door would be closed in an anechoic chamber,
oh
probably.
yeah, 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 you'd want it to close
Duh.
otherwise. Um,
I had to make that joke. No, but come on, nobody else is gonna do it.
um, but yeah, no, it's more just a case of like, well, if it's a small speaker thing, then we can do hemi-anechoic stuff outside or in the warehouse there. And if it's a big speaker, then I can't logistically get it into the anechoic chamber anyway. So
Mhm.
I don't quite know what
Mhm.
to do there. But technically, the door is open except for when you're actually doing the measurements. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm still open to doing the Vienna thing sooner if the opportunity arises, right? Or if we can, sufficiently, if the need is so strong, right? That I'd be happy to go to Vienna, if I mean, I'd love to. That'd be great. But also next year it'll be at Vienna, the show. So
yeah.
you know,
Give us some more spicy takes,
all right.
chat. NCR
Um,
Trooper 69 says Sony headphones are the best looking headphones out there.
they look
Um,
good, I think.
they look
Yeah,
okay. I
I
mean,
would
it depends on if you like unseasoned porridge
Yeah.
or
No,
Yes, I do. I
are they
do.
talking about the
oh yeah.
wireless ones or the normal ones? Because the normal ones, like the MV1 and the MDR M1, look awesome. Like
Yeah.
I love the Sony aesthetic in general.
Yeah. Harmon is bait and a waste of time. I don't think so. But I do think that there's, as Griffin has said, there's an over indexing for Harmon that occurs both on the evaluator side and on the manufacturing side. The man, the annoying thing is that because we focus on measurements, like we do measurements and we're interested in measurements, we talk about measurements in our reviews. Fucking people assume that what we're doing is talking about the Harmon target and that we're evaluating
That's
everything
been a
relative to the
problem.
Harmon target. It
Like
happens
people
all the
yeah.
time. It's like, the bad measurement man is talking is saying that is judging this product, um, you know, I, and then they assume that it's to do with Harmon. that is something to do with the Harman target. And it's like we haven't used the Harman target in literally over 2 years.
I also think we're among those who disagree with the measurements we post.
Yeah,
Like more than
yeah.
any other person making content. Like for most of the people making content who use measurements, they don't really know how to they don't really know what
Align the
to expect
differing.
or how it's going to align with their impression, so they just
Mhm,
show it to you and then either give no commentary or straight up just say, "This is what I'm hearing."
mhm.
Um, we don't really do that,
But
I think.
people accuse us of that at every turn because we focus on measurements. Like we conduct measurements and we post them. So it's like, oh, you're the measurement people, therefore you must be using the Harman target. And
Therefore, you don't listen.
exactly, yeah, it's frustrating, because it's like, well, we're the ones literally giving you the tools to better examine how you might hear something in a way that the measurement does not show. Like, and the reasons why. um Biggest variance is 4K and up for you, Joe. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
that's
say
right.
yes, but I think 1K and up, man. Like, it's 1K.
I'd say
For
up
me,
to
it's
3K, I'm generally a good fit with the 5128 at least.
yeah, yeah. um
Stephen McTowley says the food in Vienna will be better than Munich. That man has not been to Chopin.
the food in Munich is good, but I gotta say the food in Croatia was some of the best that I've ever had.
What
Mm.
was
The
a
food in
particular
Croatia was
highlight?
nuts. There was a truffle pasta that I had. It was so good that we went back to the same restaurant another, like, the next night. Um, it was, yeah, it's just like, it kind of put everything ever, like, the other places were great. Like, Slovenian food was great too. The Austrian food that I had was good, but nothing was as good as the Croatian food. Um, HD600 mid is mid. HD600 has good slam. I don't know if I agree
That's
with
a
I
hot
don't think either of
take.
those takes are good.
No,
I
well, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold space for the
The
HD
first
600 mid
the
uh
first one
argument.
might has a bit more,
That one's got a little
yeah,
bit more. It has good slam. Doesn't it? Where does it roll off again? It's like
50 hertz, I think.
50 hertz or something like that.
Slam is not in the bass.
No,
But
but
it but
like,
it but it still doesn't really have that much of that
It
quality, at
doesn't,
least.
no. But
Yeah.
I think the reason it doesn't is because there's a there's a darkness to it that is
darkness.
a little
Yes.
too much, a little too muffled in certain spots.
There's a dark there's a darkness
But
to me. It's why I
I
like
think the 1K on the 600 is really
the
kind of a problem
forwardness.
for me.
The
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than the current paradigm shows, but
But I
the
kind of
future
think, again,
paradigm might show that
this is
better.
one of those examples of, like, broadband, wideband. It's a fairly neutral sounding
Yeah, of
headphone,
course.
but it has some colorations, and I actually think they are ones that, to me at least, they make it more enjoyable than something like the HD 550. Right? There is that sort of, like,
I
sweetness
thought
that I
the
talked
550
about.
was more forward there.
No, I'm not talking about that band specifically. I'm talking about, like,
Oh, okay.
the general, like, the forward kind of, upper bass section of a
Got it.
600, combined with the upper treble, forwardness. And I actually think that that sort of mid-range 1 kilohertz thing kind of works with that more forward bass thing, because if the forward bass thing weren't there, then it would make that headphone sound way too lean, right?
Yeah.
So, like, having some of those little flaring moments, I think it's
That was the error of the 560S, was that it had that
mhm,
1K thing, but didn't have
didn't
any
have the bass.
warmth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
B Ash has quite a good spicy topic. Except for one or two, there hasn't been any new notable headphones released in the last 2 years.
I feel like 2 years is being generous.
There hasn't. Sorry, where is this? Oh, any new notable headphone? Well, okay, what would they be? I would say the HD 550, right?
I wouldn't even say that's,
I don't know
like,
if I'd say it's
super
notable though.
notable. Like, it's good. It's
There's
one
been
of the
good
only
headphones,
reasonable headphones, but I
but
wouldn't say it's, like
Not like it doesn't do that many things that different from what was already in that.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Um,
notable is ironically such a subjective term. Like, there's definitely been good headphones released in the last 2 years, but I would kind of agree that there's not really been any like big step forward headphones released in the last 2 years.
yeah.
I
I
would
mean,
say
I'm
that
just trying
the
to see.
trend for hi-fi has been as much bass as possible as you can get in an open back.
Yeah,
Um,
because and I can understand that. I can
and
understand that.
I think the big kind of developments in that space haven't necessarily been for sound quality, but have been for like comfort while delivering that amount of bass. So like the 490 Pro and the MV1 and planars like the I guess the FT1 Pro and stuff like that.
Dynamics are a mental construct. Sorry, that's quite a good line. Um,
It's correct.
the FT1, like the Theo stuff, I'd say that's probably notable in terms of
Yeah.
the performance it offers at the price.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly,
Um, Cosmo
I
for
wouldn't
I
say
me.
haven't
that's
spent much time with
notable.
the Cosmo.
It's a nice headphone. I wouldn't say it's very notable. I mean,
Like,
no one
well, what do you
cares
mean
about that
by?
headphone.
Do you mean like price to performance for notable,
I more so
or
mean
just
that
good?
like people are actually talking about it and
Oh,
buying it
okay, I
en
see.
masse. Like the FT1 is the obvious
The
answer.
FT1, yeah,
I can't really think of another one.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, Lecram did clarify that his intention is to point out that Harman was a useful stepping stone into DF plus tilt, or I'll just say DF based evaluation. But
I
should be
mean,
left, but
the,
Harman should be left behind, and anyone still using an actual Harman target
yeah.
is using caveman tech unconsciously.
All right. Ironically, I think that this take is correct because I think people don't realize that DF is an ancient construct that that
DF
predates.
is more caveman than Harman.
Yeah, but I think as far as like people's understanding of this stuff, I think that trajectory is probably correct. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Why are
and
why are
like
the
actually
spatial? Oh, sorry.
getting to chat with Axel about the way they
Mm.
did DF loudness, the DF loudness experiments,
Mhm.
fucking great, man. Like that was, I know he's doing this stuff with OAE1, but like understanding how that led to the HD6, the creation of like that line of headphones,
Mhm.
man. Let's just do more of that.
I
Like it
mean, we
just,
don't need to do more of it. We know what the results
we
look
know, I
like,
know,
right? And
but I think
honestly, Harman's results aren't incompatible
they're
with
not.
that result. It's
But I
just
just, that
it
as a
looks more
methodology.
incompatible now because we've been using it wrong.
Yeah, yeah, but that methodology is just so, to me, it's like this just makes sense. Like I get why you did it now.
It makes a certain
Um,
amount of sense, yeah.
yeah. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. The
Why
let's keep going here.
why the
There's one.
spatial sounding headphones are not getting any interest from leading manufacturers? Are you meaning like the Atmos stuff? Because honestly, I think that it's a bit of a two-prong issue. One is that there's just not that much content. Like there's not. I really don't think there is much demand. I think that the main demand for like spatial or like Atmos stuff has been in like home theater, not music itself. And also, it's a lot more complicated because you have to have all the electronics and DSP and everything. You can't just make a headphone. Um, yeah, I think it's kind of just those two really. Like it's a bit of a chicken egg thing. Unless there is a lot of Dolby Atmos and spatial audio music, people aren't going to suddenly demand it. And even the stuff that does exist, a lot of the time, it's kind of just it's not really done all that well. So even if you have like AirPods or something that supports it, I don't think people care all that much.
Here's
I,
my
I
here's
think it's
my pitch to investors. Let's make an ANC headphone or wireless headphone that can do both spatial audio and Dolby, but also doesn't suck. Huh?
well,
Asking too
that's the other
much.
thing. It's like some of the
Hasn't
headphones
been
that do
done yet.
support it, like the AirPods Max and stuff, just kind of suck. Actually, there is one thing from Munich as well, which I did want to bring up, which was the canvas soundbar. That was
Oh, right.
cool. It's
Yeah, it was cool, but you had
okay,
to be
but
in
like
that. You had to be in that sweet spot, you know?
you
Like,
did, but that's only because they didn't have the camera. Okay, so there's this thing called back DSP, which is like I think Weiss is doing something similar now.
Boo!
You don't like back
Boo!
DSP?
Blaine, post the meme.
Okay, well
I
basically
You're talking about
it
boxy
does
speakers?
yeah. But like I think okay, and I totally understand that like there's a reason I don't use it in my speaker system and stuff. I think that a sound bar is ironically the best possible use case for it. because you can there's a sound
Yeah,
bar,
I
6
can
8
see
feet in
that.
front of you, and you can have stuff coming off, like there's sound bars which will reflect stuff off the walls, and it kind of gives a
Yeah.
sort of surround sound effect. No, this was like I can hear just a thing that's over there
The
all
Okay,
behind
problem
me.
okay, yes,
the
but it
problem
was
there is soundbar
also okay.
consumers aren't going to be the type to do all that nerd shit. Like
But
soundbar
they but
consumers are
no, but
the
the
bottom of the
point the
barrel.
No,
point
but
with
that's
this
the thing is they
product is that you didn't have to do
consumerified
that.
it.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
Oh,
you
did
just
consumerify it.
they?
it looks nice. It's like
It's a
3
totally
grand, which isn't that much for a nice soundbar. It
yeah,
was like a good sounding soundbar as well. It looks pretty, and it's like, yeah, you just sit in front of it. Like
yeah.
you can add the camera and everything, and you could probably add the in-ear mics and do like the full fat back DSP if you want to get top tier results. But if you just
But
want to sit in front of it in the sweet spot, it works. Not as
it
well as
Eh,
it could, but it
it's
works a hell of a lot better than any of the other like surround sound soundbars that I've heard.
yeah, it
cool.
it works. Like I could definitely still tell that it wasn't, like the
Oh
spell
yeah, yeah.
is broken quite regularly, I would say, for me at least when I was in that. But um it technically does do the thing, right? Like it does do the so if people care about that, it's worth considering, I would say.
I think for movies and stuff, it would be really good.
For movies, it would
Yeah,
be really cool, I
that's
think.
what it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think for a sound bar, I think is ironically the best possible use case for this tech.
Yes, and they did do that. I just
Yeah.
think that again, it's a bit defeated by the fact that you had to be in that
It's not a
s-
family viewing
it's not a
solution.
family, it's like for just, you know,
It's for
like
you.
we
That's it.
started with
Yeah.
me sitting in the back row and I was like, okay,
You move one seat forward
one
and
seat forward. I was like, okay, it's there, right? You can hear it when you're in one row
yeah.
forward.
I don't even know why they bothered having seats off to the
I know.
side because I
It's
did
just
try that. I'm like, this is just not doing it.
yeah, yeah. All right. Joe has a spicy take here. Shout outs to Gadgetry Tech, by the way.
Who's Joe?
Um, oh, sorry, Tommy.
My
Uh,
guy.
yeah, there are products that are legitimately better for competitive gaming. So this was kind of like the point that I was trying to make in that last video that I put out, where it was sort of like a little bit of a repudiation of the idea that like anything is fine for gaming, like you could game on the shittiest thing. Like that idea came out because like it's true that there are some professionals who use absolutely awful sounding products, right? But and my point there was, uh if you have something like my point there was yeah, there's better and worse, right? Like, and if you have something that to me, it's not about the soundstage thing necessarily. It's about being able to hear whatever the specific cues are more, obviously, right? And if that's something that's going to help you, I think there is better and worse.
Yeah, I think that take is very compatible with Joe's because I mean
Yeah.
Joe does the thing where he makes targets to purposely highlight the sound
Yeah.
cues of specific games.
So for me, it's not at all about the whole like the soundstage meme with
Yeah.
that.
He makes a good point about the driver matching. That's honestly a point which is probably not talked about enough for gaming related products. Because if your left and right channels
Yeah.
don't have the same response,
And
then your
designs that are
direction.
consistent, right? Like designs that are
Yeah, yeah,
positionally, yeah.
yeah, like that
That's
kind of stuff. I think just doesn't get talked about anywhere near enough, and it's
yeah,
going to be really important.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's probably one of the reasons why like the HD800 is genuinely great for gaming. It's not because of the soundstage, it's
Well,
because their tolerances are so bloody good.
and also, if you even open back headphones in general, right? Like think about the massive variance that you're going to get from the in-situ response when using closed back headphones.
Hmm.
Period. Right. So that's why, like, yes, even open backs vary positionally, right? But it's a step ahead, a meaningful step ahead of
Yep.
closed back products, typically. Which a cool design. If somebody's designing a closed back headphone, try and design something that has really good positional consistency. I'd be very curious in a product like
Good
that.
luck.
I know it's hard.
Yeah.
Okay. 4 to 5 years ago, the big four HD100, LCD-X, Clear, and Aria are all irrelevant now. So we've moved on a lot.
I wouldn't say the
I
HD800 is irrelevant.
no. I honestly, I wouldn't even say the Aria is irrelevant. The
I
only
wouldn't say
reason
the
the Aria
Clear
is
is irrelevant.
irrelevant is just because Hyperman's released a bunch of very similar stuff since then. I
Can we
think the
talk about
Aria kind of.
how Odyssey is a little irrelevant now?
I mean, they made the Max
I'm going to
one.
head off in like 5 minutes, by the way, because I need to
Yeah,
get
we
back to
we do
editing.
have to end the stream
Okay.
shortly. Yeah,
But
the
like, right?
Maxwell.
Like, I feel like there are way less people talking about the LCDX than there were 3 years ago.
Well, they stopped
That's true.
releasing new revisions every 6 months.
No, but also like there's sort of like a 2-year window when these products are, they're launched, they're released, there's a hype train, and then it falls off. And I think we're just on the down cadence of those.
Unless it's an actually good headphone like the
Well, but they also
HD800.
did the whole redesign, which to me, like, yes, they look nice or nicer, or they're more like
It looks so goddamn nice. It's
refined,
such a
right?
shame.
But they are just not ergonomically suitable at all. So the fact that the MM500 is a good headphone is kind of irrelevant,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So they gotta basically hit the drawing board again, come up with some new designs, put the acoustics of an MM500 into it, and then we'll be talking about it again. I think we'll be
I
right
still
back.
think
know-
MM500 can be improved on dramatically.
Oh, sure, but I'm just saying at a minimum that, and then we'll be talking about it again.
Do we know if many of the original actual acoustics engineers and stuff are still with Odyssey? Because obviously they got bought out by
believe so.
Sony. They've
No,
not
I
been putting
believe
out.
they are. I have no reason to
Okay.
imagine that they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because they've certainly seemed to be putting out less products overall since the Sony acquisition, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I
yes,
do think a
yes.
lot of their resources are going towards Maxwell.
Yeah.
I think they put out the
Which-
S10 or whatever it was. I tried that in
S20.
Munich.
Oh, the S20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried that in Munich. Oh, you tried it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where you had me listen for oversampling. Or
Oh
oversampling.
yes, that was kind of fun. Yeah, I mean that one is like it wasn't bad, but it just do we know what the price on that is?
I don't know. It
think it's
actually
like
sounded better
something,
than I
500
was
something?
expected. Than I expected. Like it had a bit of that same problem that the Moondrop Edge has, but it not as bad.
Oh, the shout?
$500. Okay, $500 isn't bad, to be fair, and it's built really nicely. It looks
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
It's reasonably
I
comfortable.
had in my head it was 1,500. I was like, that's a lot more.
I don't know.
already.
$500 with that headband is a no from me. That headband is terrible.
It was reasonably comfortable to me. I thought it was one that like
You are very insensitive to headband comfort, I find, Andrew.
I'm using a Capra strap right now.
Are you? I can't even see
I
it.
can't use
It
Capra
looks like
straps.
it looks like it's not even working.
I wish I could use Capra straps, but on literally every headphone,
Your head is too big.
I don't have the like extra room to put a Capra strap in because I've just got to put it on max
No,
for everything.
Griffin, you're right. I am much more sensitive to weight. But I agree.
But
like
you also have a big head, so clamp takes off some of the
it does.
of the downward.
But
load.
I will fully agree that most headbands are too narrow. Like they should be wider. There needs to be more surface area, especially if they are going to be heavier. Okay, let's quickly run through these speed round here. There should be a different preference curve for open backs and closed backs, probably due to the obstruction effect. So this is kind of something that Axel has been interested in as well, just because of acoustic impedance differences. But I
don't think we
don't know.
have any conclusive answer to this. Like,
So here's the problem. You
unfortunately-
just need to have a better sense of what the actual in situ response is at the eardrums, right? Because then you would
yeah,
actually
I think that's the thing is there's so much noise just involved with.
how many
closed
people
back.
are actually listening to these products and getting a leak?
Well, there's that too, but just positional variation and the HPTF differences with a closed back. It's just there's so much more room for noisy data and results there that it's really hard to work out whether there is a difference in actual preference as to what people prefer when the acoustic impedance is higher with the closed
I just
back, or
don't
if
know how
it's
you
just
can actually control for it. Like
So
I don't know.
What I would say, and what kind of I think is missed by the Grell take on this, which it's that yes, the occlusion effect does cause a difference in acoustic impedance and stiffness of the air in the ear canal or whatever, but
no, but it's the effect of the occlusion effect on like the experience, the perception. So like removing the SPL differences.
Yes, but what I'll say is that in my experience, and the best test I can think of for any like normal person at home to actually test this is listen to the AirPods Pro with the same tuning in like a somewhat noisy environment, but swap through all of the cancellation settings. You are getting the same FR at your eardrum because it compensates for that. So you're getting the same frequency response no matter which mode you're in. But the way you hear that frequency response changes with the influence not of the acoustic impedance difference, because actually the acoustic impedance when using like say transparency mode and noise canceling mode, it's actually roughly the same. It's much lower than with it off. But what changes is the noise. What changes is the leak into your ear, so that when say you're listening with transparency mode, you're going to notice the bass a lot less.
Oh, so you're just
So
it's a difference in noise floor. So your overall
yes,
perception changes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's
but that's what I'm saying. So it's not due to the occlusion effects in fact impact on acoustic impedance alone.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, in that sense, I that's kind of what I was thinking as well. Like
Yeah, no, that's
my
what Cameron said,
example.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, well, yeah. My example of this is when I was making a headphone, I had a driver, like instantiated in one side, like implemented properly, and then the other side was completely driverless. And just putting it on my head, it was a massive difference, even though both of them were acoustically, let's say, open, right? Um, so I have to imagine that has an effect on people's preference. And also, this is totally conjecture, but I wonder if a big part of this is the low mid Harman scoop. If that is more suitable for a closeback type of design.
It depends if it's passive or active. It depends
Mm.
if there's active noise canceling. Because if there's active noise canceling, or sorry, if there's not active noise canceling, the noise floor shifts entirely so that you're getting a lot of like bass
Hmm.
noise, like your bodily noise and rumble in your environment, than you would if it was active, right? Because all of that's not all of that stuff, but that stuff would be significantly canceled, and it would be more like an open back scenario, at least
Yeah.
in terms of the acoustic impedance's effect on bodily noise and environmental noise. The noise floor of all of these circumstances, passive closed volume, active closed volume, and passive open volume, are all different
Hmm.
and different enough such that like there are meaningful perceptual differences between them, even with the same frequency response of the device producing the sound. So I can see the argument for there being different responses for each, but I think the responses people think would be better for each would actually not be correct.
Interesting. Okay. Um.
One or two more.
Yeah. Why the spatial sounding headphones are not? Oh, we did that one already,
Oh, we
right?
did
Yeah.
that one, yeah.
Yeah. FIO's FT1 is like Mega 5, accidental perfection for the price. I wouldn't say perfection, but it is very good for the price.
Just happened to, be very good
I would
result.
honestly say
but-
that's probably the other like big,
Notable.
notable release
Yeah.
in the last few years.
Yeah.
Even though
Um,
it might have been released a few years ago, such that it's not current, but it only got hyped recently.
The latest ASMR video, maybe they mean ASR video from Emir
I
about
assume so.
OPA amp, op amp rolling
amp.
have no impact on sound. Is it a scam? I haven't watched that video.
I haven't watched the videos.
I don't really, I don't follow that. IEM should use open back target than no bass gang.
Yeah, so I replied to that. I think it might be a little more complicated than that. IEMs also have the issue where ear canal, eardrum stuff has an effect on the actual SPL you're getting. But it also has a noise floor that is primarily comprised of bass. So there are different masking factors to overcome there. The preference research seems to indicate that people do actually prefer kind of a brighter, less bassy sound in IEMs a lot of the time. That's not to say the result that showed the Harman target is preferred is invalid, or that the sound guys being preferred is invalid, or whatever.
Well,
But
that's just for the communities, right? Like,
sorry,
it's just anecdotal for the communities. Like what the like based on the products that they end up lauding.
no, I was basing that on Harman's the
Okay.
unpublished study.
I got you. Okay.
Because a lot of people preferred a near diffuse field response,
Interesting.
like basically very little bass boost and basically just flat treble. But we don't know what their ear canals are doing. We don't know what their eardrums are doing. Like, I would not be surprised at all if people were just getting a different, darker response in their ear and needed more relative to the 51/28 ear load. So,
Yep. And on that terrible disappointment.
by the way, is that a Top Gear thing? What is that?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, is it Top Gear or Grand Tour? It's one of the two.
It was Top Gear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was, no, it was Grand Tour. It was on that Bombshell originally, and then it was Grand Tour that
Yeah.
they changed it. Legally distinct. Yeah.
And this has been a positive production by the BBC. Although I don't think I'm allowed to say that on this. All right.
Thank you very much, guys, and we will see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Later.